the same. I'm not going to do anything else to the dog. I want the dog taken care of, and they've taken most of the steps. I'm disappointed they're not all done yet, but they can after Friday, in my opinion, to finish it. I think they're trying to comply, and I think they've done most of it. There's nothing new. This is the same dog before. We just didn't discuss it last time.
Same owner, different dog.
Different dog, but this dog this is the same event that happened right before our last meeting. It just wasn't on the agenda to discuss that dog. So there's nothing different that we didn't know about it. This isn't a new event.
Right, it's not new knowledge.
And this is why we had all the dogs licensed, but I want that dog also held to the same kennel restrictions as the first one.
What's your thoughts, Charlie?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing?
Yep.
May I just ask the name of the dog that is in question?
I believe Bree.
Bren.
Bren?
B-R-Y-N-N.
Was Bree the other dog?
Nico.
Nico.
Which,
Nico.
I have a question, actually. So when I went to go pay the dog licenser, my dog, the dog license, that dog wasn't even in your system, and I was just confused as to why it was such a big deal.
Which one, the Nico?
Nico, he wasn't in your system at all.
Well, sometimes that is the big deal, because it means you didn't come and register.
No, I'm saying that, like, after, like, he's a new dog, he's young.
Oh, okay.
So I'm saying as to why he wasn't put in the system after we did.
We don't put him in the system until you come in to pay for it. We can't put him in because.
Okay.
Okay.
He doesn't
Yeah, it was
exist
more of
until you
a
come in.
administrative process.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
He doesn't exist in our
Right.
system because we can't say, hey, this person has a dog and this
Yeah.
is the name.
Well, you could deem him dangerous.
It came before us, and one of the requirements, sorry if I might, was that the dogs become registered.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay.
If someone drives a car down the road that's unregistered and they get stopped,
Right.
it doesn't suddenly register the car with the registry.
I'm not saying that.
It's the same thing.
Right.
What we're talking about here is licensing and registering the dog. It's just a registry. It just tracks the dog. That's the whole purpose for it.
Okay.
We don't register it for you, you register it.
I follow what
We're
you're
aware of
saying.
it, that's why we made the restrictions.
No, but
The other-
my other dogs though that I didn't come.
I don't
my
know
puppy.
why, that's not what we do, that's what the clerk does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If your other dogs had been registered even in a previous year, we still know that they're your owner until someone says different.
Okay.
So if they had been registered previously, that's why they were in our system. With a new puppy, a lot of times why we wouldn't automatically register it is, despite all the information we gathered even in a meeting, we need the owner to formally come in and kind of sign their name saying, yes, this is my dog. Otherwise, we make assumptions and all of a sudden we're applying a dog to somebody that's not the appropriate owner. So it's more paperwork, administrative reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody have anything more to say on this? Okay. I think it's fairly obvious that two of the board members have stated their position. I'm not inclined to disagree, so right now we would ask you to apply the same control measures to Bryn as we had requested you apply to Nico. We'll have it formally written up, sent out. Right now we didn't go to the level of, and so far I don't know if we necessarily have to.
You don't.
But we could go to the next level of like microchip, things like that. It has a benefit if the dog escapes a lot. It hasn't been reported the dog's regularly escaping. And it's costly, so I'm not inclined to ask you to spend more money on that as well at this time. I wouldn't hesitate to do it though if we do hear from you guys again for any dog at the household, just because it would get to a point that that might be a need for a tracking system.
I do have a question on the kennels. Limited space, we have a decent size, actually it's 2 kennels that we've made into 1.
Okay.
Do we need 2 separate kennels? Or do we can just use the 2 that we have?
My understanding is you need at least a 12 by 12 area for each dog. So if it's 24 by 12, 6 feet high, then it meets the requirement.
Oh, they're high.
I don't know
Yes.
if we have to say per dog. I don't think that's.
It's more of just making sure there's enough square footage per each animal in a space. so that they have freedom to roam. So you don't put 2 in, and now they have half the space that the requirement was intended for.
They could go one at a time. Look at, I'm not thrilled it's not all done. I'm very happy you've done most of it. I'm happy to hear the dogs haven't gotten out again. I'm happy to see you taking control of them and making efforts to do the right thing with them. I'm very happy about that. I won't support a second pen. I will support one, but
Okay.
that's my opinion. But I do want to see the insurance by Friday. I'd like
Yep.
the proof in the office. Or we could say reasonably by Monday. Our office is closed Friday, so.
Is there an email
So
I
you-
can send it to?
Yep.
Friday?
Actually, your
No.
business card is right behind you.
One thing just to clarify when you go through this, so you don't accidentally let it slip, this requirement now applies to 2 dogs to be insured. So you may want to
Right.
double check with your agent that what you're talking about is going to cover them both
Insurance
now.
is the
I'm
problem.
only covering
Right.
mine.
I don't know enough. If they change it based on breeds, insurance is different. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I just make sure it's clear so they don't come back and say, nope, we weren't insuring that one.
I'm gonna insure mine, she's gonna insure Bryn, so they're gonna be 2 separate policies.
Okay. That's why I was bringing it up.
Okay.
Based on the efforts you did on site with a kennel and the fact that it sounds like at least one, and Charlie probably agrees, we're not going to request that you do another. We would ask you to be reasonable in how often you might have 2 in one. I'm just saying be reasonable, and I'm not going to try to define reason at the moment.
He wasn't helping define reason. These dogs are not dogs that we would put out. They're dogs that stay with us.
Okay.
Her dog was with her when the incident happened. Her dog was with her when the incident happened. The dogs aren't tied outside. The only one dog that's tied outside is our Siberian Husky, who doesn't stay outside during the summer very long. But in winter, which we get multiple visits about our Siberian Husky in the wintertime being outside when it's cold. We have had multiple times that they've come to talk to us about her. But the other dogs don't get tied out. She's the one that enjoys it. The other dogs do not enjoy being outside without people. We're with them all the time because they're our family members.
Okay. So I guess just to clarify, because we're going to have to send another list paper like this to the owners for this particular dog. Would we actually remove the section about the outdoor enclosure so it doesn't sound like it's a second request for a second enclosure? Or maintain the existing? Reword it to state that. Okay.
Can I say one more thing?
It just says the dog shall remain on a leash or in the enclosure. So it doesn't say they have to develop it.
Okay.
So
I got
it
you.
already says it needs to be in the 12 by 12. It doesn't say which 12 by 12 or they're on 12 by 12.
In the front of the house,
I think we're safe.
there's one door, a porch, and another
Yeah,
door.
they already said that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you got the
She
safeguard.
saw that. And in the back, it's fenced off. And there's the kennel. So we can say there is a double enclosure.
Would you consider that a double enclosure if the yard is fenced in and the enclosure is inside the yard?
Fence is like 6 feet, 8 feet.
Oh, I'm requesting,
Yeah, I was just-
okay,
I was
I
just
got
adding
you.
that
The height of the
to it.
fence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, well,
I would leave that
the
to
reason
them to
there's a roof-
provide a
So that would
report
be-
and if they think you should take extra
double,
steps.
Front and back.
But the reason there's a roof on these, because dogs can go over 6 feet. So even
Yeah.
if it pushes out past you, it can jump the fence. So I would say no, it doesn't count. But even a kid gate inside, something to slow the dog down from coming out the door to you, is all we're looking for. Something that it can't just run by the door and get it, It's not going to run past you and the kitty gate in the door. That's not what the dog's going to do.
They're talking about the enclosures.
I know.
Oh, okay. The second,
But so
okay.
once the front has a double entry like a mudroom, I understand that, that's perfect. It just makes, when you open the door, the dog can't bolt out. You need something to slow the dog down from bolting out of the house. So once it bolts out, if it does go out past the door, and then there's only a 6-foot fence, I had a 110-pound Rowdy, she could clear a 6-foot fence like it was not even there. So they can do it. So that's the idea of the double. It's only a little bit left to do. It's not,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not a big
I'm
stretch.
not saying.
We're not unreasonable people.
You've done most of it.
I just want to get, do you guys have any more feedback based on this discussion? Your position as an animal control officer, does it seem acceptable, reasonable? Do you see us missing something?
No, I don't see anything being used, do you see anything?
No.
Okay.
No, stop.
We impose a lot of sanctions, and they've met almost all of them, so, and we haven't had another incident.
Right.
Whereas when we're coming in to hit the first one, the second one happened shortly after. It was pretty frustrating, so it's, I'm pleased with the results.
Okay.
Well,
I hope you guys are.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
One thing I would like to
Dogs harmed. I don't want to see dogs chipped. I don't want to see dogs put down.
I don't want to take away dogs.
I don't.
That's not our job.
I don't want any of that to happen.
contain an issue and learn from it.
Yeah.
What I would like to state is, and it, I might not even need to state it, Master General Law might even cover me on this one, but no matter what we state here, it doesn't stop anything from your neighbor if she had a civil suit because she actually thought there was a reason that it was due, whether it was medical or not. We're not necessarily saying you owe anything to your neighbor, but we're also not going to say that we're stopping any action she could take if she felt necessary. I'm not even saying you have a relationship where she would want to. I just don't want you to walk away thinking that because we didn't say it, that's issue is resolved, because I don't know what that situation is.
The only thing is that I'm surprised she's not here. I'm just hoping that she's okay with this whole thing, and that she knows that we aren't upset with her over this whole thing either.
Okay.
We're not that. I've known that family for a really long time.
And I haven't had a chance to speak to her directly myself, so I don't know either. So
she's a really nice person.
The hearing request didn't come from her, so it came from the animal control.
well, exactly. And I'll be honest, yeah, she did not bring it to us and ask, so.
Because I already, when this
Thank
incident
you.
happened, I went and talked to her to make sure that she was all right.
Okay. All
And
right,
to let her
then.
know that she can continue her routine by our house, that she was perfectly safe.
Okay.
And she has.
And she does. She goes about, she continues her routine, as far as I know, that she continues her routine.
All right.
And
Well,
because she spoke to my daughter when it happened, and then she said, all I ask is that you keep your dog in is that this doesn't happen again. And I said, oh, this will never happen again. And then after that, and I was concerned, and I went to talk to her to make sure that she was okay. This is how neighbors are supposed to deal with things.
no, I agree. And I think
It shouldn't be other than that.
there's a certain point, just from an outside perspective, just,
We'll get it.
or a devil's advocate.
Bob's got
It works great when neighbors are getting along.
probably like this, right?
But when it's just neighbors, say it's a real small group, there is a potential for intimidation where outsiders won't realize. I don't know you well enough. I'm not even saying you would be that person. I'm stating that the reason laws allow third parties to make a request for hearings like this is because there is that potential that someone's afraid to come forward. So that's why animal control officers, police departments, and others that may witness an event have that right to request the hearing. So having the hearing, that's why it sometimes goes beyond neighbors just working it out. There are times I'm sure I'll have something come before me thinking, oh, could you have just figured it out yourselves? But that's a personal opinion, and it's not what I do as a selectman. I have a different role, so.
That's why the emotional support dog.
So I think, unless you have more to say, we're generally saying status quo with these regulations. We're going to apply them to the dog Bren. We'll formally send you the letter on that. So everything that you're now doing with Nico, you also need to do with Bren. If there's a certain point in the future that you would like to request any of these to be alleviated, say 2 or 3 years, something that would actually say you've shown a true change in the potential, we might consider it, but we would request you bring it before us as a request, and then we can also bring the animal control officers back and look at it again at that time.
I just have a question. So with Nico, if no medical records were provided and I bring that to you guys, is that gonna change anything?
Medical records provided as in, did anybody get hurt?
This is the first.
You're right.
We never got any medical records. Our lawyer never got any.
Oh, I got you.
Medical records from,
The previous officer that was bitten.
oh,
apparently they stated they had made some requests for some records and none were provided.
Well, my lawyer did, yeah, and none were provided.
I meant your party
Yeah.
made the request.
Made, the request
That
was
would
made
be-
to who?
They talked to the police. Perfect.
Talk to her, they sent a formal request.
I'm pretty sure he's the lawyer, so
Okay.
obviously he said
Yeah.
a formal request.
Okay.
Did you see him?
We cannot make a decision. I have not,
No.
but nor did I ask. So
Yeah,
don't.
you- well,
No,
no.
yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
explaining. So that would be something as a separate item that I would request that you bring before the town administrator and make that request.
Would have to
Yeah,
be
And what we
certified.
can do then is research it. Similarly, though, I would say give it at least a year before you come back and ask to relieve yourself of the regulations we put in.
Yeah.
Because we need to show a history of this will not reoccur. And we need to find out how we could possibly reintroduce the dog. It may actually be something where we ask the owners to maybe take a class with someone that's designed to say, okay, whether it's an aggressive breed that if you don't know how to raise it right, maybe you don't know when to catch a snap reaction, and they might be able to teach you, hey, this is going to cause that. Don't let go of them, and that's, I don't know. I'm just saying that might be the step necessary to get to reducing some of the regulations.
The whole attack was that he felt threatened because of the way the police officers. I just want to say one thing. There was 2 officers on that scene, and one was actually in my yard already, and he wasn't aggressive at all. And my dog was just standing there. He didn't try to attack him.
We went through this, and
No,
I'm
I
not
just wanted
disagreeing
to say
at
that.
all with what you said. What I am suggesting, though, is in order for you to get any relief from this,
Right.
you need to show not just your side of it, but that you understood their side and how you can work towards the middle to resolve the problem.
Yeah. And
The reason we made the decision, the final decision was there, is because even if the dog felt threatened, you're not in an enclosed yard with signage saying keep out, and because of that, it's all on you to keep the dog from doing that even if it feels threatened. Because you haven't done that, we're asking you to take these extra steps. Now, if you can show learning from experience, similar things, and then come back before us, we might entertain. But right now, you're still telling me, you're not telling me that part, if you follow what I mean. Like,
Well,
I understand, had I not let the dog get out of my hands, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I can show you how he walks around the yard now. So.
I understand. And it's not necessarily a life sentence, but it takes time to show it. So we can't just make a decision tonight to say anything about that other than, let's see if time shows it.
I was just asking.
I would definitely entertain something, though, down the line to hear what you have to say and then get more feedback from others that may also be able to support that. I don't know about the others, but I would entertain it. Do you guys want to make a motion on just reapplying this?
Certainly, I would make a motion that we reapply the same conditions to the dog named Bryn as we have on Nico.
Okay, I'll second.
Any more discussion?
However, there will not be 90 days to comply.
Okay.
Compliance should be within 2 weeks. Because everything else is there. So.
It's most just doing the right thing.
It's just getting, yeah.
Okay.
So if we get the 2,
You're mostly done. You've done most of it. You haven't had any instances. Keep up what you're doing, you're going to be fine.
Do you want to say 2 weeks or just say June 30th?
It doesn't matter. I said 2 weeks. She said she'll have a Friday, so it's moot.
2 weeks.
Well, I
There you
don't
go.
know when she's going to be able to have her.
Hers is past due.
Who?
who's who?
Puts on July 2nd, the next select board meeting anyway,
I'm
so.
gonna have that
Oh,
for
okay.
you guys Friday. Hers is
Do you
Bryn.
want to?
Okay, then June 30th as
Getting
well.
the inspector in there before that next meeting. That
Still,
should be part of this.
So no, why don't we do 30 days for that insurance policy for the new dog? I
Okay.
thought she was saying they already had them set.
Okay.
I want to give her
All
some
right.
time. Because I don't know what the insurance is going to cost, and the same thing, I don't expect anyone to just kind of plop out whatever they ask for up front, so I give it 30 days for the insurance on Brett.
For
All right.
just the insurance?
No,
Yeah.
it's all the same outside of that,
Everything else
right?
should be done in 2 weeks, because it's basically done, but the insurance,
The one issue, though,
30 days. So my motion's to apply all the same things with 2-week compliance, with the exception of insurance, is 30 days.
Okay, we have one other issue that you're gonna have to work through that I also, it's the kennel license. I don't know the effort, I don't know the process or the timeline. So at a minimum, I would just request updates to the town administrator's office, board of selectmen, every 2
Actually be the
weeks
building department.
to tell us what you did every 2 weeks. If you've done nothing, tell us you did nothing and why. And I would still look for you to have it, at minimum, an application submitted to the right department that does it in 30 days. So I would look for an update in 2 weeks, and then I would like to know that you've actually made the application and submitted it in 30 days. Does that make sense?
Are we gonna get that, are we gonna get that in writing too?
This whole thing again.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, what he just
Yeah.
said,
Yep.
okay.
That's something that we're granting you as a favor because it should have been done already, but recognizing knowledge and education of the system and the process, I'm willing to try one more time to give you a little more time, and it sounds like the other board members will work with
I believe the penalty was harsh if
you.
we remove all dogs on the spot if you didn't comply. We're not doing that.
Right.
There was a very harsh if it's not done. But you've done most of it, so we're trying to be lenient with it.
And just be harsh.
Because it's
Yeah.
not about us, it's about other people being safe, and we have to think about that. We have 2 instances, we have to make sure people don't get bit.
Time will prove itself out if.
And I want my neighbors to be safe. And I feel safe too. And I can tell you, I do not feel safe anymore in my own hometown. Did you know that when we go to bed at night time, we barricade our, we put a good lock on our front door? Because we do not feel safe here anymore. Not at all. And it's not because my neighbor's dog sometimes scares me. I don't want that thing to be free because I know he'll come over. But am I gonna say anything to her? No. But it's not, it has to do with other things. I just do not feel safe in my town anymore.
If there's something outside of it, without getting into detail, please don't
We've
now.
already done.
But if
We've already gotten into all
you,
this.
I would ask if you thought there was a valid reason, we do need to communicate with our office to let us know so that if there is something we need to review, you bring it to our attention.
Thank you.
And that's all I can say from here because I don't know enough about it, nor does it need to be brought up today.
No.
But if you truly do believe there's something that should be reviewed, discussed, figured out, you need to bring it to our attention, otherwise it will just continue. So, but that's a separate topic, so please, if you feel so inclined, figure it out.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Just a matter of housekeeping. You guys, with the conditions, you also have to vote to deem the dog itself as a nuisance with the conditions.
Or
Dangerous.
dangerous.
It's dangerous. It's a dangerous demon to meet these conditions. Nuisance is as much as you can't do all these, so.
You haven't voted yet.
We can, per our bylaw, we don't have to deem it dangerous to still imply. We have a bylaw that says it can be,
I still would deem it
Potentially
dangerous because
dangerous.
of the severity of the punctures and the bites. That was some pretty serious. That wasn't a little nip and scratch in the skin.
I think the first step was to deem the dog either a nuisance or dangerous.
Right, and I proposed
If you can't
dangerous.
deem them either of them, you wouldn't have any kind of requirements to set forward. You have
well,
to-
that's what I was saying, it didn't have to be deemed dangerous to provide requirements. It could be nuisance or potentially dangerous. Our bylaw uses the words potentially dangerous,
Correct.
which
No.
is similar to nuisance, I
hasn't
guess,
been
per
any-
state law.
You haven't deemed the dog anything yet.
Agreed.
Okay.
As far
He's
as-
right.
Okay.
Yeah, you brought up, we actually do that, or this doesn't matter.
As far as to be considered a bite, wouldn't that have to be medically proven? And not just by someone's.
I do believe it would leave us open to an appeal if we did not have medical proof. That's all I can say on that.
No, that's what I wanted to hear. It can't be done by just a lay person saying that the dog, that it was a bite.
If I'm correct, we also did not have any witnesses make a statement today that actually witnessed the event.
Autumn was the only one that was there.
No, I'm just trying to make sure I'm not missing something I didn't
Yes.
remember. Okay. But that's put on the record. That's known.
Is it gonna be your official statement that dog did not bite though your neighbor? You're under oath.
I wasn't there, sir. I didn't see it.
Okay.
I
Is that-
wasn't
is it-
spoken.
I wasn't there either.
Okay, so nobody was there. The injuries sure look like it. If the injuries are caused by the dog knocked him down, I'd still deem it dangerous.
Okay, but as far as that, there was no doctor on the scene
If,
to be able to make that,
if the dog,
to make that, there was no doctor on the scene. I can make all sorts of conclusions to people, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist, and I could also make assumptions on people, on things too, and it doesn't make it so.
We've done animal, dangerous dog hearings in the past that didn't include people. So it's not necessarily has to deal with people getting bit. Sometimes we've had hearings where the dogs are deemed dangerous just based on their actions, not because they actually bit a person.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is that, but as far as saying that a dog bit someone, isn't there proof as far as a professional to say the dog actually bit him?
I think if an appeal was filed, it would go to that extent, but at this time, we had a request from animal control, from the police, that we have a dangerous dog hearing, and here we are.
Oh,
Right, no.
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's okay, that's not what I'm saying.
What she's saying is we cannot say the dog bit the person because nobody knows if the dog bit. It wasn't even presented from the animal control officer as it was a surefire bite. It was, the circumstances were described, and it led to the opinion that it was likely a bite, but there was no proof it was a bite. And so that she's just trying to make it that we don't say the dog bit the person because we don't have the evidence presented to say that.
Yes.
Okay.
given the photographs of the injuries, most people, most reasonable people of reasonable intelligence would look at the marks through the skin and the patterning of the marks, and they would come to the conclusion on their own that they are more likely than not a bite mark. That's what most people would probably come to the conclusion of.
Or fall on a hand trowel.
What we need to come to the conclusion of is dangerous
fell.
or not. And the dog is a large dog. The dog was not properly restrained. The dog is not being withheld back by voice command, so it should have been secured, and it wasn't. I need to make sure we take actions to secure the dog and make sure that it's kept under
All
control.
those other things that you said were reasonable, very reasonable.
And
But as far as it has to be, as far as I know, it should be someone in the medical field to make that assumption, to make that fact.
This hearing is for us to make our decision with what we understand of it.
But not as a
and make.
professional position, doctor.
I'm ready. I have my
Could I
opinion that
just-
it's a dangerous dog, and I want these sanctions applied. That's my opinion.
The position that any one of us take on whether it's a dangerous dog or a nuisance dog isn't solely reliant on whether it was a bite. And there's a bigger picture here, and he just explained a couple of didn't respond to control measures, that voice or whatever. It did jump on someone, it knocked someone over, injuries were incurred. That is generally the basis in which the decision will be made.
Okay, that's.
Whether it was a bite or not is still a personal decision, and it may be considered subjective, but according to the Mass General Law right now, that's what the three of us are. The ones that are going to interpret what we believe is going to make the public safer. So it's not right now as much a debate about those details as the bigger picture and how we took it all in and what we believe is the appropriate way to keep the public safe.
Okay, as long as it's not written that she actually bit someone when there's no.
Agreed. And I do believe we will not be making that in the record.
Okay.
Right. It cannot be stated that way because it wouldn't be complete.
Is there like a place where you keep all the dangerous dogs that the public can look at?
You mean like the records?
Yeah.
Do you guys know? I think that's a state registry, right? Once it gets deemed dangerous, it actually gets filed with the state. So if it goes to another town, like in Barnstable, they can actually go to a state history saying this was deemed dangerous.
I believe so, but I do not have to.
Okay.
It may be with the town clerk.
She might have records here in town of which ones have been deemed dangerous. I think the state maintains a dangerous dog list, but it doesn't maintain a nuisance dog list, is what I thought I understood the difference was. Is one says, okay, you're still keeping it local, you still think it's something you can work with, and one says, this is extreme, and if for any reason the owners don't comply and they leave or move the dog without telling us, the other town can now find out if it goes to get registered, they can check with the state and say, okay, we know this is a dangerous dog. And
It
so I
attaches
think
that
it carries
dog.
with that dog longer as a dangerous dog than a nuisance dog. That's my understanding. Am I correct as far as you know?
Yeah, and I believe it's done, tracked by the state. That's the whole idea. We're tagging the dog as dangerous because of this incident. There was an altercation with her. It was unprovoked by her. She was contacted by the dog, and she has puncture wounds and injuries. That's fair to say. As a result of this incident, she was injured with a dog that wasn't on a leash, that wasn't controllable. That's why I say it's dangerous. We don't want this to happen to, like I said, a 6-year-old kid.
No, I know, yeah.
I mean, that's why it's done. I'm not trying to be mean to the dog, you know that. We're not putting any new sanctions on you, you know that. We're being as lenient as we can be, because I know these things are not easy to comply with, and you've done most of them. But they do need to be complied with.
Do you have anything else to add, sir?
Nope. I think Greg said it very, very well.
All right, so I guess we'd make a motion
I'll
on.
make a motion to deem this dog named Brent a dangerous dog.
Seconds it. Call for a vote.
I make a motion that we follow up with them a letter of sanctions, as we discussed, the same as we did for the other dog, Nico, with the changes that we were giving them, the timelines you outlined, the 30 days for the insurance, and at least something to occur on the kennel licensing within 2 weeks to make an application and start that process forward. Otherwise, 2-week complying with everything.
I'll second.
Call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. All right. This agenda item is over. Thank you very much for attending.
The hearing is closed.
Please do recall, this hearing is closed. Please do remember that you do have the right, you have a 10-day appeal time. So if you do speak to your lawyer and you want to make any appeals to this, you have 10 days to file something. I
Right.
believe it's actually something you would file with the East Brookfield District Court. Is that what? That would be our preference. I think you probably have any Mass General Court that you're allowed to, but I don't know the rules on that.
Mr.
So talk to your lawyer.
May I say this? Thank you very much for the way you handled this meeting. I appreciate the way that you conducted this meeting
Well, thank you.
very much.
Yeah. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Don't get too wet. All right. Since we're close enough, what I'd like to do is on the agenda, I'd like to move up the Stetson School item. We have a handful of people, I believe, that have got some concerns here. We're all set with you if you're all set. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you know if Bob's coming back or not, if he wanted any input on this or not?
Is that a call?
Okay.
I'm assuming.
Yeah, we're both stations, so it probably lightning strike or something, so hopefully it's.
Structure fire.
What's that?
Structure fire in North Brookfield.
Oh, so mutual aid structure there, he's not coming back.
Well, we'll work through it.
Once they
what
tell
I-
both, it's gonna be fire related, so.
What I would like to start with here is, are you willing to speak on this matter? Do you mind laying out the timeline as you know it, from the night before right through the morning and then the apprehension of?
Are we speaking of the three?
Oh, the Stetson School, the 3 individuals that, if I'm correct, that's what this is about, Lucy, right? That
It's
one.
about the security in general, and those, the two recent ones, the one on the 6th and the 7th, and the one on the 14th.
Okay.
We've had several again.
So, I can speak on all of them really, but on the 6th to the 7th, we were notified at approximately 11 p.m. that 3 juveniles had escaped from Stetson. There was approximately a 3-hour delay in the time that we were notified. They actually left campus approximately 8 p.m.
Okay.
We immediately contacted dogs to try to set up a track. The 3 juveniles were well organized. We did set up a track. The State Police K-9 continued to track straight to the road. It was believed that one of the juveniles had a cell phone that is contraband up there and had contacted somebody to have them picked up. We entered them in the system as missing. We put out bolos. And then the next morning at approximately 8:10 in the morning, Stetson staff were en route to Gardner Court, observed the 3 individuals, were able to secure one of them. The other 2 fled into the woods. Hubbardston immediately called us. We set up a perimeter, called for additional assets, including State Police K-9 and Air Wing. Those last 2 juveniles were apprehended at approximately 2 that afternoon. What is a little bit concerning about that incident is, like I said, those 3 individuals were well organized, and they had a written manifesto, including gang materials, including names, a list of things that they were searching for, which included guns, drugs. They also, while they were on the run, broke into at least 3 vehicles that we know of, including a family's camper in Hubbardston. They spent the night in the camper, posted a lookout and everything. They were well organized. They did steal a cell phone from a vehicle in Barry and use that during their escape. Like I said, as of right now, I know of 3 vehicles for sure that they broke into, but some of them occurred in Hubbardston, so there's probably additional charges pending in Hubbardston against those 3 individuals. The other night, again, a student went off campus. This time there was only about a 30-minute delay in them notifying us. Again, set up a perimeter, called for additional assets, and that individual was apprehended, I think it was an hour and a half later. He actually ended up walking back onto campus. So that's basically the brief on those 2 incidents.
Okay. What I'd like to do then, Lucy, if you don't mind, you can actually present what you came here to present.
Sir.
Oh, please, feel free to have a nice chair.
Yeah. Okay. I thank you for the opportunity to talk about this, and I thank the Deputy Chief for that rundown, because now I don't have to say as much. You know, we're really concerned about that incident. There was Fox 20 feet, 25 news coverage that talked about the contraband, bomb manifesto, and the instructions for armed carjacking and armed robbery, how to evade police officers. It sounds like that's pretty much true, that they broke into places while they were gone, stolen cell phone. And then a week later, another one. And you know, it's kind of unbelievable. It's not, because I live close to Stetson home. I live on a route through the woods. Other people here do too. We've been visited many times. This is the one that made the big news. But it's nothing new. One of our things is, you know, other towns have group intensive group homes, very similar to Stetson. Rutland has 4, Paxton has 1. The same thing, it requires a 1 staff to 3 student ratio. And we don't hear about them having these issues. I've worked with, not at Stetson, I've tried to work with Stetson on my past runaway issues. And since 2013, since it's been part of 7 Hills, there's just no local tie with the community. I don't get anywhere. It's all shrouded in, these kids are special ed, we can't do this and that because they're special ed. And you know, that may be true, but you know, we've got these 5 group homes between Rutland and Paxton that are the same type of home, that are managed by Devereaux Advanced Behavioral Health. And because I might not hear about it, but with 5 homes you think you might hear about something. So it leads you to conclude that maybe Stetson is just poorly managed, or that it's just plain too big and spread out. And I grew up here in Barry, and you know, we used to go to school with the kids. We used to go to church with them. We'd go out to parties out there. But you know, from about the 1970s, when they started taking state funds, they had to take the kids that were sent there. But in the old days, you know, there were problem kids even in the old days. And they would run away, or you'd have a problem with maybe some mischief on your property. You could go to one of the directors and say, look, we've got a problem. And they were local, they were our neighbors, and they'd say, I'll take care of it. And it was taken care of. We can't do that now. You know, since 2013, with the 7 Hills, they're like, you know, throwing darts at a rubber board, and they just come bouncing back at you. So, you know, back in 1994, they started accepting only boys with sexual behavior problems. And that was not really announced to the community. That was really done pretty much under the table. I didn't learn about it until my mother, who at that time lived alone in our house on James Street had one of those boys in the house with her. It was a very frightening incident. And I don't even think the police at that time knew the serious nature of the boy's problems that were there. When she called after she convinced him to leave, they said, oh, don't worry about it. When he gets tired, he'll go back to the school. She was an elderly widow living alone. So I moved back in. I'm still there and still having problems. So there's another, my path through the woods, which I almost abut Stetson. I've got a short strip of Cook's Canyon. I know down Pine Ridge Skiera area, down to South Berry Road's another way. And now they've got the solar panels they can hide under, so the helicopters can't see them. Okay. Back just a year ago, June 11, 2017, sunny Sunday afternoon, I have a kid walk up into my house. I'm running away from Stetson School. Can you tell me how to do it? Well, I said, well, you can't do that. You have to go back. And I look out, and at the tree line of my woods, which is 100 yards from my house, I see a very large man hiding behind the tree. And now I'm getting really scared. Was this a staff person, or was this one of the older students? Because they go up to 22. And I'm like, do I call to him, or do I just get really scared? Because the kid that was at the door was not terribly big. He was maybe 13. Skinny kid. And I said, you've got to go back. No, I'm never going back. I said, well, you have to. And I had a pitchfork in my hand, and I convinced him to go back in the woods. Well, my security trail camera was right in a great position to capture all that, had the staff person not stolen it, and thrown it on the edge of Stetson property with a memory chip taken out. So Stetson said, no boys ran away that day. If somebody told you that a boy ran away, it was a neighbor boy that was lying to you. Well, now, does this anything better illustrate how far out of touch Seven Hills is with our community than to suggest that I have a neighbor boy that I don't know, and that a neighbor boy would come up to me and ask me how to run away from Stetson home when he knows those woods as well as anybody. I mean, the whole thing is ludicrous. I worked through Chief Carbone on that, his staff with Sergeant Ricos. They had me, from that point on, file everything with Rutland Regional Dispatch, so there'd be a record of it. Now, the police was great about it, but on August 27th, there was another runaway. And for hours that night, we had the helicopters over our heads. They actually come down low enough, because I'm on a hill, for them to shine their lights into my windows. And that is very, very disturbing, because you know that there is somebody out there. So, you know, the issue was not resolved. I know the police have been working on it. I know Chief Carbone tried to arrange a meeting between Stetson and Seven Hills officials and this board. And from what I understand, Stetson would not attend. But there was an article about that meeting on December 4th, 2017 in the Worcester Telegram and Gazette, with responses from Mr. Allred, the Seven Hills Vice President at Stetson, in which he said that there aren't bad boys, not dangerous boys at Stetson. We're not a locked facility. We're a therapeutic school. We pay $72,000 a year for water. We're a great benefit to the town. Of course, they use a lot of water. That's why they pay $72,000 if they do. So, you know, one reason I'm here tonight is I've had people say to me, oh, the boys out there can't be dangerous because there's no fence. It can't be true that they're dangerous. So I just want on the record that Seven Hills' own website says, youth appropriate for group home 1 to 3 services, that's 1 staff to 3 students, are typically not able to safely manage independent community access and require a high level of supervision, behavioral support, and structure to develop self-regulation skills to reduce the frequency and intensity of behaviors that place themselves or others at risk of harm. And they go on to say that there are youth who cannot reside in the family home and also cannot manage independently in the community, youth with sexual behavior problems, youth whose conduct in a family home included noncompliance and high-risk behaviors, youth at risk or active with substance use and abuse. Symptoms exhibited by this population include sexually abusive / inappropriate behavior, oppositional / rule-breaking behaviors, interpersonal aggression, runaway, socially inappropriate, substance abuse, and history of fire setting. And I had an arson fire on my property in June of 2016. That's never been solved. The point nearest Stetson School. And we get it. We know these kids have suffered trauma themselves. They've had bad lives. But we also know they can't cope with certain triggers in their life. And when they do, they panic and they run away. Sometimes it doesn't sound as much like they're panicking as the deputy described. They were very well planned on this June 6 to 7 runaway. How did they get hold of bomb-making manifesto? Obviously, they've got some computer access or cell phone access before they even stole it. They're well planned. They know how to break into cars, into homes, into campers. Some of my neighbors have found them in their sheds when they've run away, or their outbuildings. When they escape, you know, they're also not getting the psych drugs that many of them take to help control their problem behaviors. And when people are desperate, they do desperate things. And this is a really bad combination. We've got really frightened, desperate boys, and some of them are as big as men. And we've got homeowners who are frightened and maybe armed. And I think you can imagine the tragedy that could occur someday. So in the meantime, we can't enjoy our homes. I can't ever be without my door unlocked, even in the middle of the day. It's summer, it's hot, we want to enjoy our homes. And you need the tax money from us, and we're paying taxes to you for security there, and it's just ludicrous. We have to have our doors locked. You're spending all this money, the police, the state, I assume, for the helicopters, to catch boys that can just walk away, and there's no locked doors. We have locked doors, and they don't. You know, it just does not make any sense. And this isn't a case of us not wanting a school for problem boys in our backyard. Barry has been serving kids with special needs and problems since 1848. That's 170 years, when Elm Hill School was established here. I've been working with special needs kids since I was 12 years old, and a lot of others have too. We get it. We understand they need help, and where they're supposed to get help is at Stetson School. Stetson School says they need to be in a highly structured, controlled setting to get that help. They're not safe, and we're not safe when they're not there. We want accountability on the part of Stetson and Seven Hills. I know the roadblocks they're throwing up, that we can't do anything that courts haven't decreed. I've heard it all. It doesn't matter. We need to do something. And I truly appreciate from the police that there were text messages sent out to some people in the last 2 breakouts, which has been one of our complaints. I don't get good cell phone reception at my house. I have one for emergencies when I'm away. Didn't get a telephone call, didn't get an email. I truly hope we can get a commitment to more fully notify people by all means. I think you need a computer to sign up for Code Red. We need to help people. I mean, our most vulnerable people, the elderly, mostly don't have cell phones. And, you know, we want locked doors at Stetson. We'd like a perimeter fence. You know, I know they've refused that in the past, but it just seems ludicrous to spend all this money when they don't have locked doors. They have admitted they have high-risk students. For those, I'd like to see GPS ankle monitors. Then you'd know immediately when they left. You wouldn't need to call out helicopters and the dogs. They claim at Stetson School, Mr. Allred does anyway, that they rely solely on strategic cameras on campus and protocols in place for training staff and security. Nothing else. That's that 1-to-3 staff ratio. If you look at Indeed.com and employee reviews by both current and former employees at Stetson, there's very high turnover, chronic understaffing. That means poor security. Also, comments about employees being injured on the job. Is it possible that the police can monitor their cameras 24 hours a day? So, you know, we also have people that are very concerned about the kids going to Quabbin or whatever other public school they may go to. Is that how they're downloading the information they have on how to do these criminal deeds that they have done? So I certainly hope that you would consider requiring Stetson and Seven Hills to work with a committee of town and school officials and citizens that are concerned to work with Stetson, make them work with us somehow on these, and to get the state involved. So, you know, I'm just begging you, please, we've got other people that feel the same way here, and many that didn't come. But, you know, use our voices to help you force something to be done with Stetson. And thank you for listening.
Well, thank you for taking the time, very much. You got something, Charlie?
Well, we requested the fence and
Yeah, I know.
didn't get too far with it. I thought we might have we did meet with them, and along with Senator Goby and Representative Berthiaume, I thought that we might be heading down a road for some progress, but I was very disturbed to hear the 3 hours. That's inexcusable in my mind.
Yeah.
Can I comment on that too?
Yeah.
Just because my thing is like, referring back to the article from December, when they said that they had a 2-hour window, like, I would question that, because, 2 hours then, but they didn't, you said the second run, they called within a half an hour. Why was it okay to call for a half an hour then, but
I agree.
they use it as an excuse when
I
it
can't-
suits them?
I don't know the answer to. I
Yeah,
just don't
well, I'm
know.
just throwing
Yeah.
stuff out there. And like, strategically placed cameras, I would actually question where those cameras are.
Mm-hmm.
I worked there for 16 years. So-
I believe their 2-hour thing is when they know the kid's out, they kind of watch them and follow them before they do anything, or they try to find them in the house. These kids were gone for 3 hours before they realized it. So they
And
called
that's the
they
scary
called,
thing.
and they called the police immediately. So
Yeah.
yes, that failure is huge.
To clarify something else, apparently they're supposed to do bed checks or just checks on personnel like every 15
When
minutes.
those kids are in their room, they're 10-minute room checks.
That's right. So apparently it's pretty obvious that for 3 times 10, 30 times they failed to actually identify the people in the building before they realized they were gone.
Yeah.
The lady behind you has got a comment.
So I just want to comment on the window thing. And as a former employee of Stetson, and I know that I'm no longer working there, but my husband left there as a supervisor less than a year ago. And I will tell you that the administration tells the on-call people to be able to contact administration before they reach out to the police. So, and what that looks like is lots of times the administrators are very hard to get a hold of, and you know, there is a lashback from the higher ups if you are to call the police before getting in actual contact with an administrator. So, but I can also tell you that, especially if this is something that happened overnight, that the overnight staff, because of staffing issues, are not very reliable of even staying awake all night. So it's definitely a possibility for kids to escape and to collect the patterns of their employees, and because staffing is so hard, you know, they're not willing to fire people because that just means more. So it's just, a lot of that it's dangerous because it puts the community at risk because staff are told not to contact people when they actually need help.
This is just a follow-up statement on that. Hopefully employees over there are listening. I think it's very important that if there's a written procedure on how to act and you're then asked to ask your supervisor who doesn't respond in a timely manner before you can take the next step, there's a reason they call whistleblower protection. This is public safety.
Right.
If you see that happening, bring it to the town's attention so we can go back to Stetson and Seven Hills and say, strike one, 2 more, we're going straight to the State Department, you know, the Department of Mental Health and the Children and Families, or the Youth Commission, I forget which ones. I think there's like 2 or 3 that actually all play a role in this, and report it. Because I think we've gotten to the point that we've been trying to be nice. Hey, let's work with Stetson, let's work with, and then Stetson tries to throw it back to, oh, underfunded this, and play a low budget game. I think if anybody knows charitable foundations, the only people that don't get paid are the ones that actually do the work.
You mean the CEO?
That's my point. So I don't want to hear about budgets until you can tell me you've actually met your requirements. That's my opinion. But we need people that are actually there and want to make sure it's right, and if it's not right, to raise a flag and make something happen. And so it's important to get that information out and feel like you're protected in doing it, because that's what I meant. Whistleblower protection is there for a reason. When it's public safety, you don't just nod your head and walk away and hope nobody gets hurt. Because right now it sounds like that's the only way you're going to make any change, is nobody can go behind the door and have a little handshake and say we'll get through this one this time, because historically that's not working. And this particular management company, because that's what I'll call them at the moment, apparently seems to be worse than even the previous administration, and it's just gotten worse. So I kind of agree that now that they don't live here, it's easier to be disattached, just chalk it up to another statistic. And I'm not one that believes in, I'm not all left, I'm not all right when it comes to mental health and issues like that. I believe every case is a little specific. But I don't believe you necessarily coddle someone in order to try to turn them around. But you also don't lock them up and make them feel like they're a prisoner the rest of their life. There's a balance. Stetson does not appear to even want you to come towards the middle. I would have at least said, hey, why don't you put a fence up on the back and the two sides, so at least your first getaway is the street. And now you can focus more cameras in certain areas, you can have better control over it. Change your pattern of communication. Last time we spoke, I think somebody said their first call is supposed to be the state. If there's a runaway, they're supposed to call the state, and the state's supposed to tell them if they're supposed to call the police. And when they call the police, they're supposed to call the state police. I still haven't quite figured out why they don't just call the local police first.
On August 27th, when there was the runaway in 2017, that helicopter was overhead for 4 or 5 hours, and when I spoke with Chief Carbone the next day, the Barrie police had never been advised of the whole thing.
And that's my point. The state seems to have created a pattern that has excluded the local municipality in any understanding and process, any role in this. And then they just assign people out there and say, you deal with it, but we're not going to let you. And I think we need to make a bigger press as a community to make sure that they understand they have to deal with it. Because they might be a significant employer, they might have some benefit with water, but the truth is, we could have a for-profit come in and use that space and make more money and give us more money for using that space than they. And they'll hire just as many, if not, because they already got a building and a lot of land. So they're not necessarily a great benefit to this town. But we can create a partnership if they're willing to be partners. And I'm just telling you, from my heart, that's how I feel about it. Do you have something more?
Certainly, I'd make a motion that we begin steps tonight to force Stetson to put a 12-foot fence with barbed wire top enclosing the entire facility in a 24-hour staff gate to enter. And we take whatever actions we need to make sure that comes. If that means we wind up in court, in the end, we wind up in court. But I think it starts with a letter asking them to do it. And if we need to refer to town council to see how to write that letter, we do it. And if they don't comply, we take them to court. This has got to stop.
Yep.
They should fence it in with a 12-foot fence. They should put a security guard 24 hours at that gate.
And it's the transparency too.
Then they can run around their little penned area all they want. They got acres and acres. The kids can run and they can follow them and let them have their hands-off philosophy. But they roam their place, not through the town and through people's properties. They don't have the right to roam free through private property and into traffic on our roads and things as they do. If they want to have hands-off and let them roam, they have acres and acres to let them roam. But fence it in. I'm tired of these things continuing.
Yeah, I would second that, and I think we're reaching a point where maybe we ought to, I don't know if there's such a thing as a class action lawsuit, I'm not a lawyer, but it would seem like that they are clearly infringing upon the rights of our citizens, and not to mention our school children that are in school. I've heard incidents that have happened. I'm tired of it, and I you know, the state is as much to blame as Seven Hills. They're the ones making these placements, and they're the ones that wanted this whole decentralization, and they got it, and now it's not working.
It's tough when the state places them there, because the state obviously doesn't have much oversight on these facilities. They just place them, and we're done with it. And that's a shame that that's how it goes to that end. And these facilities are obviously doing everything they can to maximize profit. They're a business. They're a non-profit, but people are making money. They can afford a fence. It's not a difficult thing to do. It's the neighborly thing to do. And if they don't do it when we ask them to do it, we should take legal steps to force it to be done.
Yep.
What I would like to, just a sec, Clara, but what I'd like to add to that comment about the security fence is also that the Barry Police Department write up a communication protocol that is acceptable to the chief, and let Stetson know we expect him to do exactly as the chief asks. He does not need to work with them if he doesn't want to. He can just write it down and say, you're going to do this, and we'll just mail it to him. But if he wants to work with them, that's his privilege. I wouldn't tell him to or not to, but he's had discussions with him. We've done this. This isn't like, let's revisit and talk again. We've talked, and we've talked, and we've talked. And they pretty much just try to placate you enough to go away and try again. And I agree with fellow board members. I'm tired of it. And we're getting to a point where this isn't just a runaway. There's someone breaking in, you know, writing up manifests, talking about major violence, trying to get... I don't want to hear again that these people aren't a public safety hazard when the proof is in the pudding.
I've talked to the chief recently and suggested he might want to contact Seven Hills. They're never going to give out private HEPA-protected information on the students, but they can certainly categorize them maybe into 4 groups of seriousness, category 1, 2, 3, or 4. And they can discuss what those categories would be and how many students fall into each category. So at least our police department would understand what type of people are living there. And when someone disappears, they need to be told in a timely manner. In a different category, we could require a different timely manner of reporting. And then the chief would know exactly what type of person, what type of danger they pose, if any, when they escape. And even when they go to visits, if you have a medical call. What category is this? Category 2, 3, 4? What category patient are we coming to? What are the police and EMTs walking into when we go on site? Because we still go to that facility all the time. But I think we need to take this seriously, and that'll be my motion, that we take actions to secure their property with a fence and a guard. And, pardon?
The communication protocol will just do us one motion, if you're okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the communication protocol.
You second that already?
Yep.
Claire?
On their statement that they have one person with 3 students, can we ask them to prove that to us?
I believe what we can do is ask the state to check and verify it.
Well, that is the
Because
state.
they fall under the state reg. I mean, the state would verify that Seven Hills has the 1-to-3 ratio. I don't know if we can go in and ask and they have to answer, but they do have to answer to the state that manages their funding and the mental health regulations or the child services regulations involved. I don't think I don't think we have the authority to step in and ask.
Sure we do.
We can ask, but they're not required to answer us, is all I meant.
Yeah.
Could we ask the state to audit their staffing records? I mean, use the word in audit.
Yes, I like that.
It is.
As well as training records.
Yes.
Because you might have someone you call a supervisor that still doesn't on the concept of public safety.
Yes, I'm wondering about, the one that works 3 to 11 on a Sunday night, because most of my runaways have been Sunday nights or, some evening or on a Sunday afternoon. And believe me, I was far more afraid of the staff guy that was hiding behind my tree and stole my camera than I was of the kid. So I'd like to know who some of those people are.
Yeah, it's a staff query checked. That'd be interesting to know. Because I would think
What did you
that
say?
it's a staff query check because they.
Yes, they are.
Should be. Well, they should be. Doesn't mean they all are.
Well,
But-
it doesn't mean they've been caught for anything.
But it also doesn't mean they really all are.
Well, there's a lot with Corey that people don't quite get. Corey also doesn't mean that everybody's getting checked for the same background. That becomes a subjective decision by the organization that's making the request.
Well, the Corey doesn't include the sex offender registry either, some skimpy staff.
Well, that's all I'm saying. I don't know, but to say they're Corey'd could be an easy one to say yes, and all it meant is they got a CJIS report, and what did they do with it? They may just put it in a file. You know, that signifies they got Corey'd because you don't have to do anything if they don't have a record.
Yeah.
That concerns you. Yes, sir.
So just from the police department's perspective, the benefit also to having a fence around the property, it's not only for the students would be automatically trespassing once they cross that line. Staff would be subject to the same trespassing, the same
Yes.
laws of the Commonwealth
Thank you.
as far as trespassing as the students would. So that is one of the benefits that the police department sees in a fence as well. So it would apply to both staff and students.
Thank you.
And I just wanna say too, that you can't forget that this time they left armed and dangerous because they had a baseball bat. I think that's
Right.
important to say that.
That was reported,
Yeah,
but
I'll clarify that.
Was that the fruit?
Right.
No, they
Oh, it
did not
wasn't.
end up having, when they left the facility, it does not appear that they were armed.
Oh, okay, all right, well.
We initially got a report in Hubbardston that they may have been armed.
Yeah,
but
okay, all right, all
when we
right.
recovered them, they were not armed.
Okay, I just wanted to.
But their manifesto was pretty serious, to gain weapons, to evade police, to steal vehicles, to do
Well,
robbery.
right, I mean, it has to be
It was,
serious.
it was a pretty serious plan in court, you know, they talk about, was a mens rea, the intent to commit a crime, and they clearly had the intent, and that's enough to convict.
And they can pick up a baseball bat out of anybody's yard when they go by, or some
Or a
crowbar,
pitchfork.
or a piece of, a hammer, or something that somebody's left out. And they can drop it, so they could have been armed at any time.
But the important thing is to lay it out as they did in documents and plan it that well, that in itself is a crime, whether they followed through with all those things or not. The intent to commit that crime was clear and was there, and hopefully they get prosecuted accordingly.
do you have anything to add? Do you have anything to add to this or no? You're kind of from a different side of the angle, but, okay.
Everything's been pretty much said.
So if I'm correct, we had like 2 action items. One is a letter to Stetson about perimeter fence and communication protocol, and the other was requesting the state audit. Okay.
I would be a big proponent of the classification of dangerousness level.
Especially for
Oh.
medics.
At least when it's reported, they communicate this particular individual would be considered a higher risk or not.
They usually do send a staff member, with the ambulance, we've had numerous EMTs and paramedics assaulted on the way to the hospital.
Okay.
Now, when you say dangerousness, is that breaking it down just behaviorally, or are we talking about sexually, or?
We need to decide that, and that's something left for the chief. I talked to him briefly about this, unfortunately during the vacation, but you need to figure out what sort of classifications he wants it broken down into. How, you know, what kind of kids do you have here? And when they tell him that generally what they have, he can sort of segregate it into 4 groups or 3 groups, whatever he sees fit. And how many fit this group, how many fit this group, how many fit this group. And then he'll have that to pass on to Bob and the EMTs and the other officers to, when you get a category 2, it means this. And then you know what you're walking into. And that's, it's big for the medics, it's big for the police, and for everybody involved to know what the potential is when you're walking into it. And that's why I suggested that. And I think he was gonna do it, he sounded receptive to it, but I think he's still on vacation, or is he back now?
They'll be back tomorrow.
So I don't expect him to have done anything yet, obviously.
I would ask if you don't mind passing it to him when we talk about building this communication protocol, if he does just reach out to Bobby. Probably would anyway, but
Absolutely, yeah.
just, exactly, there's 2 chiefs that really have to deal with Stetson regularly. Different reasons, yes.
Just out of curiosity, does the school do anything to return to the police department the resources that it consistently uses?
No.
Stetson?
Yep.
No, they just pay their water bill. It's a great benefit to the town.
And I understand when the last building's built is dormitories for staff, so they're providing housing for staff.
That's a great answer.
For the water they use, they're paid.
Yes.
I would like to add that Devereaux, who she was talking about in Rutland, pays the salary of one trooper, or of one officer to the town annually.
Yeah,
Well, I appreciate that, because we were
These are
looking
great
for comparables, and
Yeah.
I hadn't found one yet, so that's interesting to
Yeah,
know.
they ended up going after Devereaux because they were there so often, and then that's how much they figured was costing the town a year.
Yeah. And we've got a similar lengthy history of reports. It's about, what, 30% each between police, ambulance, and I forget.
Plus what it costs the other communities, because consistently,
Right.
we rely on, I know the police have mutual aid police officers, we have to call ambulances from other communities, and we tie up their ambulance, they have an ambulance call, so their staff isn't buried.
Helicopters aren't cheap either.
Yeah.
It's more of a consistent, it's not, happens more often.
Thank you.
I don't know, but what's life flight cost, Bob, for a flight in life flight? It's
It's
like,
like $5,000 an hour, I believe.
I mean, so the helicopters are not, you know, the maintenance logs, the cost to purchase them is huge, so the number of hours you get out of life of it, and they break it down, it's thousands of dollars an hour. And then there'll be staff with probably 2 officers and a pilot and a sighter, I would think. So, it gets expensive.
What I would also suggest in that draft letter, or that letter, is to point out that the town actually holds Stetson responsible for everything that occurs by the students or faculty off that property. So any damage done to anyone's property, anything like that, the town would support a complete suit against Stetson for complete reparations.
We do bill the ambulance, and we do recoup.
Yeah, but I mean, if somebody leaves, breaks into a house, breaks a window,
That's our question.
that's Stetson is responsible, not the kid.
Four
That's
towns,
our
state
opinion.
police, dogs,
It's like a
helicopters,
parent versus,
private properties.
they're legal guardians technically of those children, so they're responsible for all the damage done.
So basically, my motion is to pursue all these things that we discussed and authorize Andrew to take the steps he needs to write a letter and follow with attorney, and if need be, we will move to a lawsuit at a future date, but I'd like to make a motion to take these steps seriously and proceed until we have that place fenced in, or until a court tells us we can't, but I think we can.
Please do, and if you could draft that and then send it to the board members independently, if we have any comments, we'll give you something, but I don't want to wait for another meeting before you would send something out. If you got a nice draft and we can move forward with it, let's, you know, we can each send you a response separately, so it's not a group discussion.
Okay, we got a vote.
Call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Truly
everyone for coming in. This
appreciate
is-
the input. Thank you as well. It's nice to hear from somebody that's worked there. That's a really good question. Do we have, where's the sign in?
I don't think we have a
Did
second.
everybody
It seems like
sign
it's
in?
been making its way around, but
Was everybody signed? Okay.
thank you. Okay, so that's that, we got. Make sure I get this right. Okay, let's see if we can work with, the next item would be the fire department wage scale, if you're okay with that, Bob. Did I miss something?
No, I was gonna have you do something really quick to get someone else out.
I can wait.
You wanna wait 2 seconds? Okay, great. And, do you wanna come up quick? With the Barry Charitable Foundation?
Okay.
The hot seat.
How exciting, but I have positive things this time.
Okay.
Of course. Thank you. It's all positive eventually. I
Yes,
hope.
it is.
Just give me a second.
Yep.
Excuse me, you're louder than we are, so it's more of a group rumble, so all of you, Claire. Thank you very much. Go ahead, sorry.
I just wanted you to know that the Barry Savings Bank Charitable Foundation has issued a grant to get the Grove Street extension spruced up,
Okay.
along with the area around the bandstand. We, as part of the process, I solicited bids, and we've hired Glidden Landscaping to
Okay.
fix up that area. As part of the process, I looked, because I walk the common every day, and I've been very irritated by the state of the Grove Street extension. Now that we have this gorgeous common, that it's looking very ratty, especially that park area. I've also started soliciting bids for the brick walkway area, because that's at the point where it needs some maintenance.
Oh, right. All the beautiful plants in the first year become a jungle to it, yeah.
Yes. My fellow board mates do not want me to pursue getting other bids until we can garner support from the citizenry of the town of Barry to help maintain this area, because they're of the opinion of great will help get it back to a beautiful state, but they want somebody to take it over.
I got you.
Sort of sponsored.
You'll dig out of the
like
hole.
you see on highways and things, sponsored by a group, and they do their flowers or whatnot.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
don't we have some of those spots in town?
I don't necessarily think that they're like signage saying that such and such group or person or business sponsors that, but
Why don't we
did-
solicit that?
well, we did put on Facebook like a post, because that came to our attention, Andrew and I, when we were on the common one day, that it looked like it needed some weeding and upkeep, and I said, well, why don't we put something online and see if we can get a group or a business that will take care of it, weed it, and we can put a little sign up, like real estate sign that says, this sponsored by or maintained by or what
And-
have you, and that's when I heard from Ann, so it
and-
kinda,
Well, I had been working on this.
That's a good
Yeah.
thing for scouting too. We could reach out to the scouts in town. That's a good thing for them to work on. Boy
Right.
Scouts or Girl Scouts with the Little League might want to sponsor something and do something together.
it's just something that's gonna have to happen annually though,
Right.
because every
Right.
spring it's gonna be
Yeah.
overgrown again if it's not taken care of.
Oh, we could also put a day together in the spring and spruce up the common day. And
You're
have
speaking
everyone come out and
strictly of
volunteer help.
landscape maintenance, and on Grove Street Extension, some potential like landscape work, so it can then be maintained further, like it needs
Correct.
like maybe some new plants or like bushes,
Well,
I don't know.
It really needs to be weeded, a new layer of mulch, and some serious pruning.
Kinda needs like a
right now,
rebuild.
Which, that's what I got the grant for, but I want to get the walkway maintained because it's starting to heave and buckle, and the pavers
Unfortunately, you're not up there
need-
enough.
need, to be resealed.
Okay.
So that's what I'm trying to work on. I was part of a group that used to go out there annually after it was put in, up until about the time that the whole common project started. We'd spend like 3 weekends and go and fix it up, but unfortunately, most of the group has either died or moved elsewhere, so we need somebody else to take it over, be it maybe the school. I know they have a horticultural type program, or at least they did at one point. Maybe they could do it in the spring, but somebody needs to.
Well, the kids also need to get so many community help hours every year in school. It would be a great way for the kids to come give back to the town and do some of their hours to get out there in the spring, because that's when they're looking for it. It's the end of the school year.
Right.
If they got hours to kill, I think that would be a great project for the school. And we could even ask them if they have, kids that need hours, we could put a day on to spruce the common up and host the day. and advertise for kids and for people to come donate their time and help. And that would be a good chance for any kids that want to pre-register with us and get their hours for school, they could get their help hours in.
Yeah, maybe something for you guys to bring up at DPW, because it may require some support from that end, if you have students
Right.
up there, because
And they could truck
What-
home the things we need and provide vehicles for
What
them.
I would really like to ask is, rather than bring it up as, oh, maybe they can get their credit hours. Maybe they can, but what I'd like to ask the school is to implement it into a horticultural class, so it's, they might get their credit hours, but they're kind of not given the choice of what hours they get. If they want to take this class, that's part of the class. Now, maybe that still applies to their credit, because they are still given the, but what happens a lot of times is they need to do their 10 hours, and then by the time they're waiting, it's too late. Because they'd be asking 2 weeks ago to do it. Well, you needed it done 2 months ago, you know, to truly prep it for the season. And, you know, when we were kids, a lot of us, you're not, well, what do I got to do in April to be ready to graduate? It's like, why isn't June here? Why isn't May here? Why am I not out the door? And so that 10 hours becomes something that you try to just squeeze in with a quick little park cleanup or a administrative thing you can kind of just do paperwork on, and it comes from so many places, because they can just help the school and get credit because the school is a community. So you're so challenged to get someone to want to do that part when you say, see if they want to do it. It might be better if you can actually see if they can incorporate it into the curriculum. And now you've got people that are taking a class where they want to do it, and the school saying, that would be a perfect place to show them how to do more than just a tomato plant. Like, this is how you take care of specialty plants, or this is what you would have to pay attention to on pavers, or what do you weed, what do you not weed. Some people like the grass and the whatever in the pavers, and some want it clear out and it's just rocks. I leave that to a professional, or my fiance. So I'm just suggesting that reach out, but I would also even ask that a little bit more, because then you get a little bit more of a commitment.
Yes, we'll support you, and we'll support maintaining it, and we will find a way to make it work, is what I'm hearing.
Okay.
I don't think we need a motion for that, but I think it's absolutely something we gotta pick up in the spring and figure out how we're gonna propose it. Talk to the schools, see if they wanna pick that up, or if we just wanna put it out there for community volunteer hours. But I am sure people would wanna come to the Common. There's getting to be more and more use in the Common. The events are getting good turnout, and people appreciate it, and I think people would love to come do something back. Most people do.
Yes, I think even the hardcore people that oppose the Common Project, now that it's done, I see them out there walking, because the Common is a place where people actually want to be and hang out now, which is fabulous. And we just need to make the whole Common as beautiful as the redone sections.
I agree. So thank you for working on the grant and doing this stuff, and we will do our share. Gentlemen, agree?
Do everything I can.
Well, I mean, we can certainly make it, we can make arrangements to get help lined up to do it. I don't think it's something you have to spend money on to do it. I think people will, we can find the volunteers and get the hours, which we really need.
Well, I'm more than willing to help out in any way that I can. So it's the Common is a statement as to who we are.
Yeah.
So, you know, we all need to take pride in it.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ann.
thank you, Ann.
All right, Bob, you're up.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
So I come tonight to propose a change to the wage classification system for the fire and EMTs. So I've been discussing with Andrew for a while, since the fire department and ambulances merged, there's the EMS and the fire had different pay scales. It's rather confusing on paydays over where everybody falls. It's something we've been talking about for a while, and every time we bring it up, more pressing issues have been brought forward. As you probably know, our full-time EMT had just resigned. He took a higher paying job, happened to be right at the end of the fiscal year, so I thought this would be the time to act, to change it. Makes sense to change it July 1st versus the middle of the budget year. So on the old comp plan, you'll notice that firefighter had there was one scale for firefighters, that one pay, no matter how long they've been on the fire department. If you look down at EMT basic, they actually had 7 steps based on their years of service. What I did is I wanted to bring the firefighters in line with the EMTs, so that if you join the department to be a straight EMT or a straight firefighter, you get the same pay rate. I mean, the job descriptions are about equal as far as responsibility goes. One thing we never had prior, we never had a firefighter EMT position. So often, you know, a lot of the guys in the fire department were EMTs. Now that we have the ambulance, they're looked upon, and their job description is almost double, because now with a general power accident, you know, they're expected to hop on the ambulance, and they're doing both roles. I feel that, you know, those guys should be getting a little bit more than the non-firefighter EMT. So we're working with Andrew. On the old comp plan, there was the position of EMT intermediate. The state has gotten rid of EMT intermediates. We don't have anymore. So we kind of turned that into the firefighter EMT position, which is we're only talking about a $1 difference. If you're a firefighter or EMT, it's $1 more. If you're a firefighter EMT, where you do that dual role, you get on both trucks, respond that way. So what we did is we took the 7 steps, we shrunk them down to 4 steps. So at 10 years, you max out. We kept the pay the same. We just reduced down some of the steps. We took out the first few steps and kind of brought that more up in line with what the other communities are, you know, paying their call EMTs and firefighters. We didn't change medic. I left that the same. I believe the medics get paid pretty comparable for what they're doing. We did also raise the lieutenant and the captain would be a 5% difference above the top step rank for a firefighter. Even as now, with some of our EMTs that have been there a long time on a call, they're actually making more money than a lieutenant or a captain who's got far more responsibility at an emergency scene calling the shots. You know, he's making, and we're only talking really a $2 increase for somebody that's been on the department for 10+ years, which those people are a little bit more valuable. You know, you can't, it's hard to pay for experience.
The value's when you need them.
Right, right. I mean, I think I looked, the average firefighter is only gonna see about a $200 difference per firefighter increase.
Why did the medic stick to a 7-step?
We just, assumed that because they're being fairly compensated, we weren't gonna now take off steps 5 through 7, just because we're bringing everybody else down. It was just, let's leave that classification alone.
Medic's a big step above.
If you
No, all I meant is you did, instead of doing that, you could have pulled out step 2, step 4, and step 6 and just squeezed it down.
We could have. I didn't, only because.
Because I'm just trying to find out, with the police, we went from that huge step down to like a 4 or 5 step type concept, and I was just thinking it out.
We're dealing with that full-time role. It might have some. Well,
I got you.
Have a little bit more say in it. I want to say unionized, but from
it's already structured, and the other things aren't.
It was just a question I had.
No, I'm saying that.
I'm not trying to really persuade you differently.
If
I
you
was
look
just.
at our paramedics are pretty well compensated for this area. Our EMTs and firefighters were pretty low compared to some of the other communities that I've spoken with, and since the fire and ambulance has kind of merged, a lot of the EMT that were firefighters they're now doing both roles. We're getting both ambulances out, where before we had a hard time recruiting people. So I think that also gives a little more incentive for the EMTs that just want to be EMTs. Maybe they'll look at wanting to be doing both roles, and some of the firefighters, that might be a little more incentive. Costs about $1,200 plus 3 or 4 months of your time uncompensated to become an EMT. Then they join the department. That I think they should be compensated for. We don't pay for that currently, so it might give somebody a little more. And again, we're talking about on your average call $2 difference or $4 difference before an ambulance call. I don't think that's gonna entice too many people to
I'd
get in
even
bed at 2 in the
entertain-
morning.
And you expect this to fall within your existing budget?
Yep, I think, based on the numbers this year, I did give Andrew, it would increase slightly, but not much, and I can't remember off the top of my head.
But we figured, you know, based off the current call out and what you have for contingency, it would still fall under what we have.
And the
for
fire
town
So what's
manager.
being presented tomorrow is something you'd
Yeah,
still be able to work
Because our
with?
call budget's a little, you know, it's got some built-in numbers there. I mean, I can't predict, we could have, a year, like a few years ago, we had brush fires every single day. This year, we didn't have any brush fires
Gotcha.
because it was a really rainy spring. So I can't predict those, but in your average year, I think we're gonna cover the costs.
We have several positions in town that when people get in the window, we've done with the police, when they get certain degrees or things and gain education, we give them stipends for that. If these firefighters, and I know that a lot of guys have done it, they go spend $1,200 out of pocket and all this time to get certified, I think we should offer a stipend to people who do it, and that might get us more EMTs as well. Maybe give them $500 or $700 if they get their EMT license, not just pass a test. Once they're licensed, that would achieve a one-time stipend for them, and we might pick up more EMTs, as well as they'll get a little more pay. But right now, there's no incentive other than they've done it. And the same with a lot of the guys, Bob's got a lot of the guys now have gone to the fire academy and put a lot of hours in to get 1-2 certified and trained by the state. There's no reward for that for them at all. There's no pay difference for it, there's no reward for it. And I think it's time to look at maybe some sort of stipend, even if it's $200 when the people make those benchmarks, because it gives us a better department, it gives them better trained people, and it's going to encourage more people to get the EMT. The firefighting, the trainings, they've got the training. I mean, getting the state certification, it's almost moot because the training that Bob's put on over the years down there has been impeccable. So everyone's trained. But the EMT, as we talked about before with the stuff going on with Step-In in the school, to try to get more people trained and have more EMTs, I think is my personal, I see it as very important. And that's why he's saying about we're staffing 2 ambulances because guys are around. We might get more to get certified if we start offering a stipend for those who have the EMT qualification.
I'd be interested in listening to that. I mean, obviously the stipend concept might be something we'd be introducing at another fiscal year, but.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's gonna happen now.
Because
but
you would just have
something-
to, you know, we could do it, but we'd have to put a limit on it per year, because if all of a sudden you had 5 guys come in and say, we all did it,
Yeah,
you're like, well, I
that
didn't
would-
budget for 5 guys to
And
hit
I would
that
want,
stipend.
you know,
And it could also be, you could take.
But
people
I
who
think we
already
could
have-
work it out, it just
And you
needs
might
a
make
little
an
thought.
allowance for people that already did it, something smaller, but to encourage more people to do it, and that's my concern, we've lost the ability to train people for free down there, that we're not gonna get people willing to shell out the $1,200 and all their time. So if we give something back or get half the money back or something for them, I think it's gonna be beneficial to the fire service and to the town overall. Because it is huge, when you have another call comes in and this guy just drops his chin on gear and can go with the ambulance, that's big.
I think this really kind of puts us really in the right direction as far as where we need to be structural wise, as far as
And, I
giving
mean,
giving incentives for people to move up.
right, and before, the guy that joins the fire department today is getting the same pay as a guy that's been there 15 or 20 years, who's, for lack of a better word, far more valuable based on their experience and knowledge of the town than somebody that's showing up for the first time and they got a long way to go. So I think that kind of gives somebody gives a little reward to the people to stick around, because it's tough to retain people now, especially with everybody's lives being as busy as they are. So the fact that we have a lot of guys that have 10 to 15 plus years says a lot about the department.
Yeah.
You can't replace experience, so. I mean, again, we're really talking about for somebody that's been there for 10 years, they're gonna get $2 more than the guy that just joined. So I don't think it's a huge increase, but I think it's something that's never been there before. And we did eliminate, on the old scale, we did eliminate the ALS coordinator line, because that ALS coordinator gets just a straight stipend every year.
And the assistant chief position.
Yep, yes.
Meaning we eliminate the assistant chief?
There was,
Right.
I guess, a vacant,
Yes.
basically.
We used to have
Okay.
assistant and a deputy, now we just have a deputy.
Okay.
Captains, lieutenants.
You have any thoughts on that, Charlie?
No, I don't have any questions.
And it would be
I'm all
effective
set.
July 1.
I make a motion to accept this new pay scale as they presented it.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion, comment?
Just that I'd like to see the stipend looked at for next year to try to get it going for next fiscal year. And we have to, that means we're gonna have to figure out how much it can be and how many we can do at a time with it, but I think it's a way to get more EMTs.
And I'd have to put restrictions out. There's stuff I would like to see, not just
That's what I
you
mean, yeah.
graduate the class, here's some money, how about you're
Right.
gonna need to show a year commitment or something.
Exactly.
Something like that. to
And
make
so,
it
and so the
work.
first year could be
Kind of like the
about-
police chief did with first year patrolmen that haven't
Right.
got their FTO. Like if we're going to be paying for the
They owe us some time. or
the
they-
academy,
Yeah, they're
you're
gonna-
committing for so many years. We're not
they're
going to
gonna
pay you,
hold
then you
time.
jump.
Right.
Or you
After
pay
a
it
year
back.
of service or something.
But you might take the
Right,
first
you'll
year.
come up with
You
something
might
that
take
will
the
help.
first year and make some stipend towards the people that already have it, as some thank you for having. It wouldn't be the same stipend.
I would listen to that. Whatever you
Yeah.
just you come up with a
Think
plan
about it, 'cause I
and
think we
you're
should
right.
do it.
I see what you're saying.
It's gonna give.
But you can't give him anything because he talked about it.
Believe me, I'm not getting my EMT, and he knows that.
I'm just joking.
I'm not gonna get an EMT.
I'm just trying to cover you on your conflict there.
No, I miss all my training now because I'm here. So I was training nights conflict with this, so I get to go to one. It's just,
If there's no further discussion, we'll call for a vote.
all right.
Aye.
Aye. So, you got that? Good to go?
That's it.
No, there's one more thing since you're here. The carryover unused vacation time request.
Yes.
I know DPW director is in a similar situation. I don't know the total amount of vacation you had this year and how much you got to use. Like, how much did you have to use and how much did you use?
So I originally had, I get 4 weeks, July 1. I had planned on using 2, I can carry 2
Yeah.
in July. Obviously, I had some military training that was short suspense that came up that wasn't in my original calendar for the year for training. It was a training that came up and they needed some extra people in my rank, so I was kind of voluntold that I was going. And then with Chris leaving, which occurred at the same exact time, for the next 2 weeks, if I take the 2 weeks off, to have 2 weeks to carry over and not lose any, I have to take the next 2 weeks of pretty much the rest of the month off. With Chris leaving, we have days that we just can't get anybody to cover. I'm hopefully gonna be posting the job Wednesday. I sent Andrew a copy of the posting today for review. But that won't close till July, so there are gaps in coverage where we're not gonna have anybody to staff the ambulance. If I take the whole month off, I can plan to use a week between now and July 1st, so I just request that I can carry over an extra week due to the unforeseen circumstance of losing our full-time EMT.
His original request was to be allowed to carry the 2, and he promised to use it by the end of July, and I'd like to entertain that because I want to keep the ambulance staffed as we're obligated to do legally.
Quick question, because I haven't had a chance to review. What's your contract say about vacation time and carryover?
I have it right here, actually.
2 weeks.
I pulled up his contract from before.
All right, so it matches the personnel policy, which is you can carry 2 weeks.
Sure, is that what it says?
I couldn't recall if it just referred to the personnel
understand it
policy or
does.
if it had a special language for yours or not.
He has time to definitely take his time off, but I'd rather give him the month to use it and not lose the ambulance coverage, is my thought. Otherwise,
Well,
I'm
I'm
sure he can.
similar thoughts. I have similar thoughts.
He can take his 2 weeks.
Yeah, it
and
says
do it,
2
but-
2 weeks.
Okay.
The same as the personnel.
And
All right.
maybe we'd want to talk about modifying the contract.
And you're asking for 3, technically.
Yeah, so I'm gonna use a week between now and the end of the month. I'll cover the days that we don't have coverage. I'll make sure that those get covered, and then I'll use that extra week, right after the first of the
So
year.
you're carrying over 1 week.
You're going to carry over 3 total.
Three.
3 total, 1 extra.
I have 2, I was gonna.
Maybe
carry
we
over
make
anyways.
an amendment to the contract to say that on a 3-year contract term, you can ask for an exemption 1 time. And this would be it, so next year he's gonna,
I would,
Plan a little
only
more ahead
because
to
I
make
think
sure.
it's a similar issue that Jason's dealing with as a
Right, 'cause we
DPW
lost Bill Ward.
superintendent.
And 2.
Due to the loss of personnel, he's
Yeah.
just got no time to take because he,
and he could take it, but it puts us in a bad place.
the one thing I wanted to say, and I wanted to make sure it was kind of made to understand trying to avoid setting the precedent
It's
concept,
extenuating circumstances.
is it's strictly due to the timeliness of the lack of personnel, not just the lack of personnel or the personnel changeover. Obviously, you losing your number 1 full-time EMT right at the end of the year.
And
Makes it
we've done
difficult to
everything
fill in the
possible
gap.
to try to fill that shift. Well, I can tell you tomorrow, the paramedic's working alone, so I'd like to,
Right.
I'm planning on working with him tomorrow to make sure that the calls are staffed during the day.
Hence the
You know,
stipend.
come
request
6 o'clock
for
at night,
EMTs.
we get our call force back.
Difficulty though, and just from my perspective, I'm just saying the difficulty is what happens if, I'm not saying any, somebody from the sewer department says, yeah, well, we've been undermanned too. I couldn't take a day off. And so that's where it's like, I'm just playing devil's advocate because I expect that question to come someday. So how do you answer that question? And that's my question to the table. How do you answer that question?
We deal with that question when it actually comes, but as we said, the timeliness of the shortages, and let's face it, he can take his time and go right now. And then the ambulance isn't staffed. You know, and I know personally, if I was gonna lose it, I'd take it. And then we could have issues for the town with our ambulance not being staffed, and I'd like to see it staffed. And I think there's a good reason, a good benefit to the town to keep the staffing and allow him, especially when he's gonna promise to use them in a finite time. This isn't just carry over until he keeps it. If he doesn't use it by July 31st, it's gone, he loses them.
Yeah, whatever.
Is that acceptable? Could you fit it, you think, within the next month?
Yeah, no, that was my.
Okay,
That's what he asked for
Trust me,
specifically.
if I don't take a vacation this summer, my wife probably gonna throw me out also.
Understood.
Gee, I wonder what that's
It
like.
would be, if she's already not happy with
Okay.
military leave, so.
I mean, specific to his case, I would have no problem, rather than calling it carryover, extending this year's vacation one more month. In other words, that allows you to, like, you can do your carryover starting July 31st. You'll carry your 2 over.
Alright.
So if you don't use it by July 31st, so in other words, we're not saying you're carrying 3 weeks over, technically.
Changing
I know
carryover date.
accounting wise, it'll look like that, like in the books, the budgets, the fiscal year money and all that. But on paper, it's more of a request to extend your vacation year by 1 month.
And I wouldn't be asking it if it wasn't for the fact that, you know, Chris had left. You know, he got his job offer, he did what he had to do, what was right for him at the time.
So that's how I would suggest we word it. It's not
So I'll make a motion
revising
to
the carryover
extend
so
Chief
much as extending your
Rogowski's,
vacation year.
extend Chief Rogowski's vacation year by 1 month for this year
Yeah.
only. And next year is back to normal.
Seconded, do we want to do Jason as well?
Yes, but is that enough time for him? He's gonna be short staffed for quite a while. We might need to give him a little more time, but we'd have to extend it and make it clear it's this 1 year extension. You'll lose him at a certain point, but we might need to wait and talk to him and see how much time he needs. We can vote to extend it and pick a term to that later.
I would prefer to extend it to the same date, and if he needs to, he can come back to us and request a further
Okay.
extension.
So.
Because I would like him
So
to
the
do
motion-
the same thing.
the
Try
motion
to
will-
sneak it
Motion will
in.
include the same for Jason Pimentel.
Okay, I'll second.
Any further discussion? I call for vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Good.
Thank you very much.
It will be done.
Appreciate the
Have a good
commitment.
night.
Have a good night.
Have a good one, Bob.
He's a good little
We're getting close.
All right, so boom, boom.
Down to Spark.
Well, what I'd like to do, because a lot of this is administrative, but I would like to get into the Economic Development Committee charge item. I had asked this to be on there because we'd talked about it a little bit before with the Economic Development Planner that was Hardwick got for the regional group.
Right.
And then we got one for an economic development plan for the town of Barry. I thought it would be important for us to get an economic development committee that would be working with both to help primarily be the voice of the town of Barry in both regards. I wanted to have a draft that would include some language that would identify them kind of as, again, they're a subcommittee to the Board of Selectmen. Town administrator will do a lot of the main go-between between them and us. But I would also like it to where whether it's once a month or at least once every 2 months, this committee meets the board at a meeting and explains the progress of either the plans they're working with, so they can assist with updates on information they're getting from the general public on the concepts of what they think we could do in the town to help improve our economic development. So it's not all just, part of it is also using this platform to let the town know what's going on. So it's not all just happening and everybody's like, I don't know what's going on. And then all of a sudden, we announce one day, here's the plan. And then we got to deal with all the
Backlash.
Thank you. Backlash. Because so I just thought this would be a good one to where we can create a committee, whether it's 3 or 5, that really is involved with primarily developing recommendations, suggestions, not having much of authority to make major decisions on anything, but adds again, whoever we can get on here to help, adds more manpower to the town administrator's office and the Board of Selectmen to continue to get this thing moving. We've made a lot of progress with like the business community of Barry. They've really kind of grown and they kind of get their feet solid now. They're really building on something.
Maybe when we look for members, we should talk to the Barry Business Association and see if some of the business members are interested in getting on that committee, because I think that's a great viewpoint for members, that they can work with our group and our grant money for what we can develop and what we're looking for. So I think it's a good idea to make the charge up to 5 people.
Yeah.
And perhaps we should solicit the business committee for help.
I would also like to reach out to the planning board to see if they'd like to identify
Absolutely.
A person to kind of designate representing their interests in this, because it would be a bigger picture type.
But I think it's important we ask for these. If we want planning board participation, it's important to ask them to have someone do it. It's important to ask the Barry businessmen to put some members in. Because when we just farm it out there and say we need whatever, people don't necessarily know we've asked and they don't necessarily apply. So I think we need to reach out to at least those groups. And maybe back to some of the local banks. Maybe there's a board member of a bank that might want to get involved in that as well, because they could be tied up in loans, and there's an aspect to them too. If we're going to develop business and businesses want to grow locally, you seek local funds from your local bank. So it may be something that, there's a lot of ways to look at it. I think we get some 5 well-qualified members that could really make a difference in that.
I would like to also in the draft somehow identify that, like when you're looking for qualities or experience, I would love someone that's a member of the town, very familiar with grant processes, grant sources, to also see if they're willing to be interested. So that's more just put it in the description, because I don't know the person. Hey, go ask this person. That's been their livelihood. But guaranteed, there's people all throughout town that has some experience with this based on the number of people that have worked in the school system or worked for the town or work in Worcester. And
anything we get with somebody with business background, planning background, development background, banking background, all of those things would be helpful, any and all, because that's what this is all about. And hopefully it won't be long before we can start to see some people saying, I could fit this business someplace in town, and it makes a tax base for us and it makes employment. And that's what we really need right now.
so in a way, right now, this would start as a committee that in its own way doesn't have any direct authority. They can't make decisions for the town. They can't make votes that are going to make, but we want to use them as an arm to support the town,
Right.
and be the additional extension. And so it's not just random people. It's, okay, you're a group, work together, develop a plan, each identify your strengths and your weaknesses, whatever, and you go reach out, then you come back, you get this plan, you come back to us, and you keep working it, and we work back and forth. It may grow into something that actually might say,
Yes.
we are going to add to your charge this particular activity that you suggested we should do, and then give them a little bit of the authority to make the decisions and just keep it moving, so they're not always asking us or someone else to make
I won't say
a
if.
vote on something.
I won't say if, I'll say when we start having the business development we're looking for. We're gonna need a group like that that kind of keeps more in touch with it and works with the planning board to determine, you may need zoning too. I mean, you may need to talk about modifying zones, work with the planning board, and work with the banks and other things together. So this group may take a very key role in the future. It's just that the intent here is to develop this town a little better and get some more, business that fit our area, Like I said, we don't want a Walmart or a Home Depot in the middle of Barry, but there's certainly a lot of businesses being like manufacturing or different types of sales shops or recreational activity type businesses. There's a lot of things that could come here that would fit well in town and would help everybody, and it's important to be able to plan it in every phase. So I agree, and I think the committee will take on a bigger role in the future.
I would love to
With
see somebody
authority.
find a way to also bring in more professional business into the town. We have a lot of people here that have actually a lot of professional experience, knowledge, and education, and they all go to Worcester, Boston, Gardner,
Well, Barton Associates.
Springfield
is big.
even, they all go everywhere else to go get their job, and if we can get to that point. I know there's some more to get there, but you get the right developer and they might look at a site and say, that's a perfect spot. I have all the infrastructure I need to put what I need.
Yep.
And we just need the right people to say, hey, look, here's that perfect spot. Kind of like realtors, things that, so is this something we would like to ask to see if Andrew could start writing up a draft based on this? Do we want to start writing up some draft stuff and throw it back and forth? What would your recommendations be?
Any and all that. I know nothing we have to move on now and do it, but I think we should start thinking about what we want. So we could all pen down ideas for what we'd like to see the charge read like, or if Andrew wants, not that he has anything else to do, he can always start penning something together, but I don't know if that's gonna be, realistic to dump on him on top of everything else right now. But we can put some ideas down and maybe talk about it at our next meeting again. We should have less to do after ATM. And we could, we usually cut the meetings back and slack off a bit, but that would give us some time to work on it and kick it around. Start to form it, and then maybe when we get more ideas, and then we can hand it to Andrew to piece it together at that point, more than throwing at him now.
And I don't mind pulling off our general charge templates that we've used. Starting the draft with what I think, and then sending it to Andrew. You can do whatever you want with it, and then send it to all of us, however.
That's fine too.
Maybe that'll just help get it started, because you got a lot going on right now. But we do have those 2 grants that are starting. I mean,
Right, and we do want to get
so
charged.
we want this as close to somewhat in place, so they're not catching up after we're already halfway through an economic development
There's no
plan.
reason those can't get passed back and forth as updates and emails, and people can make suggested changes to Andrew, and he could modify and bump them out. So if you made a draft and got that to Andrew, we could make comments to him on it, which he could modify the draft. We can't go between each other, and so,
Right.
we gotta be careful that,
So if I write something, I'll send it to him, and if he distributes it, you
He
don't
can
know if
do-
it came from me or him.
and when you respond, you have to be careful to make a separate note and don't respond in the group. And we can work that way with our ideas and let him put them together. And then at our next meeting, maybe we can bring it to a head and get a conclusion out of it that way.
You okay with that? All right, then I'll start the draft process and get it to you, and you can volley it back and forth.
And then if amendments come, you get to have the fun of changing it and resubmitting to people and.
Sounds good.
Okay, I guess
I can knock
This-
one of these things off real quick.
yeah. Go ahead.
Spartan.
Yeah.
That's just on there so that you guys are aware that the
It's
application
happening.
has come. We
Okay.
haven't received the race plan. They're still developing it.
Okay.
So, I think,
What's the time frame for this race?
August
it's
11th.
August. Yeah, so hopefully at the next meeting, you guys will be able to take some action on it.
I would suggest that we contact them and let them know that they should have that plan to us by next week.
I think they were hoping this week.
Well, I mean, by the end of the week, so that's what I meant, in the next,
And then we
by
can
Friday, because
announce our meeting, bring
It's-
everybody in to sign it.
it puts the planning board and conservation commission on a tight schedule, because July, most committees and boards like to meet once, if they can do it. And they're having their event on the 11th of August, so it's kinda, you're really asking for a hard favor from a committee to make a decision and then say, oh, I'll figure it out when they show up. And I think there was a little history with another board that I want to just make sure they have a chance to have a good voice in it before it shows up on site.
I guess, I know one thing that I guess I forgot to put on here for the agenda item, but summer schedule. So I don't know, July, 2 meetings.
That's what I wanted to
The
ask,
first
because I
meeting would be
thought,
July 2nd.
right, and with that being kind of a crazy week, I didn't know if it'd be better to see if we wanted one meeting, would we do it just like July 9th instead of the 2nd? So it's not all sandwiched around the 4th of July week, but I don't know how much that,
I'm on
I don't do
that
vacation.
week, so
Why don't we,
The second week or the first one?
The first week, 4th of
Okay.
July week, yeah.
yeah, we should avoid the 4th of July weekend.
So would the 9th be fine with you, Charlie, if we
Sure.
did one that month?
Yeah, that's
Do you
fine.
think with things going on, one would work, or do you think we got things lining up that are,
I think one will work, but I'm just not sure how we want to handle the Spartan race, because I don't know if that's gonna clear enough time for the boards to review prior.
I don't like the 9th, it's my daughter's birthday, so
16
I keep missing days.
9,
I'll
7,
miss the whole
the
night,
16th would
At
work
this
for
point,
me.
for me, flip a coin, I have no idea.
The 16th would work for me, but it does mean there's a gap between today, there's a full month before we get together again for
Why don't
any
we, how
Board
about
of
this?
Selectmen
DPW
administrative
that night,
duties.
too.
Yeah, how about we do this and I'll see what Spartan comes back with. We could always plan a special meeting just to meet with planning board, conservation, and all them to get the Spartan done.
So you're suggesting do the 9th?
I'm suggesting don't pick a date right now. See when we get back from Spartan and see what we can coordinate with those other committees. Cause we could pick a date and planning board could come
Okay.
back and say, hey, that doesn't work for us. This is what we're
I
doing.
get you.
So we can send
And
out
the
an
9th
email
actually is probably
to,
DPW commission, I wasn't thinking.
we can, send an email out to planning and conservation and see what dates work for them and try to coordinate it that way.
I'd still like to maybe tentatively mark it for the 16th, and if it doesn't work, move it, but I'd rather set a date than not set a date.
The
'cause
16th would have been your
I hate
second
to leave
meeting
a
of the
meeting and
month
not have the
anyway.
next meeting planned. You know,
I'm with Greg on that. Let's just say the 16th will be one, the 2nd will be one we skip, and if we need to adjust or create another special meeting to address certain issues, we'll just do the standard email agenda
But
development.
I'd like to have a meeting date scheduled, we leave here for our next meeting, that's all.
Do you wanna set August as well, while you're doing it?
No.
Usually those 2 months that you do those dates.
Right.
And then September it picks back up
I
normal.
think
I
we'll see what
think
happens in the 16th.
on the 16th
and we'll get a
would be
better
better
idea.
to know then, because then we'll also know how much is piled up on the desk to see how many we actually can skip versus we just got too much to do.
It's played by ear.
I know last year Charlie and I desperately were hoping to have a light July and August, and I think we still had like 3 meetings a
Yeah,
month.
we didn't
And
get very late last year, did we?
Let's just pile it on.
I think what we were finishing up
We talked about doing that, but
hiring
we
you,
met
was it? And
regularly.
then we had other,
Yeah, I
so
started
It was,
still in July, so.
we had a
yeah,
little bit of
we had lot
a,
going on.
just couldn't take the time. So yeah, okay, so July 16th would be the next meeting unless something else comes up. Spartan race thing is just something we'll deal with once the drawing
Right.
comes in.
And they get big for us later.
Technology services contract, CM Geeks.
Yep, so Faye has the copies, I have 4 copies of the contract right there. But I incorporated the suggested edits that you guys had brought from the last meeting, to reference to the RFP itself, and put in some additional language to clarify the payment schedule.
And their obligations, right?
And their obligations as well.
3 full-time employees are equal equity partners. Okay. So this is just a final vote or just signature? Did we vote last time? Is that what
You
it was?
voted to extend a contract offer, and you voted to accept the contract.
Okay. So do you wanna look at it? Do you wanna just make the motion? What's your
I'll
thoughts?
follow Andrew's recommendations.
I'll trust he made the changes he said he did, that's what he's hired for.
Okay.
And we
If not,
ask, he
we'll catch you.
does.
We'll find it. No, it's-
Here. Yeah.
So I'd make a motion, we accept the contract as it is.
Second.
I have already talked with our current IT provider, and they're willing to basically have, yeah, I sat down with them last week, went over that at the end of this month, like the end of the contract period, we'll be moving on with another IT vendor. And he offered to basically sit down with us and the new IT vendor to make sure that it was a smooth transition, all the information that they need
That's
to provide
important.
us full service and is providing.
You get all
No, I
the
appreciate it.
passwords you're looking for finally?
Yes.
Please let them know I do appreciate that.
Okay.
I mean, it's-
And we did sit down and went over and made sure everything that was an open item still was identified, that any outstanding network maps were being transferred over to us, so that's.
And they weren't managing any payments for services through a third party that if they don't make a payment, we lose it and didn't realize it?
Anything we've kind of flushed out in the last year, we brought over to our side, we basically enacted the policy that no third party purchases anything on behalf of the town, so.
Okay, perfect.
We're in better standing.
Let's call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye. And I guess we all get to sign, right? Oh, wait, I'm lost. Which one am I signing? Up here, Town of Berry.
Yeah.
Just to clarify. The next thing was, I believe, annual appointments.
Thought we did those after town meeting, huh?
No, they're effective July 1st, so. We did them probably after town meeting last year,
Right.
but it was probably just because of timing.
Yeah, they may have technically lapsed a week or two before we got to it.
Yep. Just asking. My recollection's not that bad from one year to the next, so.
No, exactly.
It
It's
was
not
right
a,
around there, but, yeah.
I see a couple of corrections.
Yeah, you're right, so, double names.
Capital?
Ones I
Page
caught
2.
were capital,
Yep.
3 names under CMRPC that were all the same.
I know, I don't know why it does this, but
Same thing with council on aging.
How'd you make out with hardware? Did you ever get a number back from them that they could contribute, because you were asking for?
I sent, on that front, I had sent them, or I did a quick little.
Because I know it's gotta go to
analysis.
receivables, it's the
Right.
general fund, it wouldn't matter for the meeting.
Or-
So
yeah, I see a
had
bunch of them on
Who's
here.
Scott?
I did a quick budgetary analysis.
Not a member
as far
that's
as
on the
what we
list?
have for a budget based
No,
off
they
of
want
their
him to be appointed.
usage of the.
Doesn't
it's a
live in-
9-member committee.
He don't live in Barry.
18% or something like that was
It
the
was,
use.
yeah, it was.
He can't be appointed.
consistent Based on the year-to-date.
He doesn't live in
1
Barry?
month and the 6
No.
month.
I don't
Neither
know.
does Bob Bentley. We didn't write the
That's what she.
have to live in Berry on the 9/11 committee. But we did say as a 9-member.
That came out to
So if
be-
they would like it, they need to come in and request it and provide the support. I don't mind, but
They did, I have
So I
it.
presented
they
that.
came in here and talked
They
to
did
us?
not come in
Basically
here,
got
but
back
there
that.
was a-
they
Well, that's
had
the
an
request.
Town meeting warrant that they were still gonna be going forward.
Why would they-
But we could meet.
Why does he need to be on the committee versus
boards
just
further discuss the-
participate?
Read the middle one.
The same number as the previous year, 75.
Which we very clearly said no at our meeting, that wasn't acceptable, that we do more, and they agreed. So we'll have to see where that goes. That's not kosher, because we had that discussion months ago.
If it falls on me, we're not following it. So,
Well, they should.
No, they need to come before and ask.
They said they would take action.
Well, that's my opinion. I can't speak for everybody here, but 9/11 committee was about the 9/11 disaster, not so much the war and terror. That was,
That's why I talked about.
now they want to redefine the charge after the fact because they,
She was asking for a big increase.
I think they're trying to create 2 committees out of
because
it.
that's too big a jump.
They are, because it's gonna be 2 projects.
We didn't argue she was opposed to it, but that would allow us to use some of that
They're
towards
only
that,
doing the
some back
project
in
on
our
the common.
coffers, and that was the intent.
Well, that's,
It's fair, it's just paying for their
then
share.
come before the board and tell us what you want to do with your committee. I'm not going to read a little 2-sentence blurb in an email, and
so we could-
nothing against anybody, if you're listening.
Depends what agreement.
But if that's what you want, you can sit here and explain why.
Always pay for the
both sides.
As long as
Of
they
whatever
understand that
division may
I'm still
exist.
asking for it, and I think the board agreed it was the way to go. Just don't wanna drop it.
Anyway, changes, did you have?
I have a
Where-
bunch
where'd I-
that
where'd I
I'm
leave you?
Xing off here.
Sorry, where'd I
So
leave you?
this is the first time I've used the system to print this out like this, our database, and apparently it did not work so well.
I thought Jen was our animal control officer, not Brian.
She is-
Brian's the
she is
part-timer.
She is the animal control officer, Brian,
He's their assistants.
Yeah, so if she's unavailable.
Terry's an assistant, Brian's an assistant, and Holly's an assistant.
I think that they were the ones that were called in, that basically were called in for that call.
Mhm.
So that's why.
I have the-
I'm
I
just
entered
looking
them
at
in.
this and it shows Brian as the only one listed as an employee.
Oh, I think, again, that's a.
Yeah.
It's a
this-
formatting
I put them
thing,
in as
didn't-
assistants. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's more of a database error.
Mhm.
Now, I also need clarification, animal control officer. Don't we have a regional agreement with Rutland?
Yeah.
And so aren't they Rutland employees?
Yeah,
Rutland
correct,
employees,
unless
but
she
they're
wants to come back.
under-
I don't think so.
The,
John's
Department of Ag
Yep.
Yeah.
requires every town to appoint a animal control officer, even if it's part of a regional
I don't know
So
if John
the-
O'Leary
the
is.
town of
So we're appointing the one they hire,
We're authorizing
technically?
their authority in our town to be the ACO.
Basically.
Okay. So it would be Jen Ford that we're authorizing, not the assistants?
All of them.
We're authorizing all of them as.
Not for
having
MGL.
Having the powers of a,
But- Oh,
of a.
why would,
Even a
They have the-
police officer from Hubbardston has no powers in Barry. A state police officer does, but another local town doesn't unless we appoint them the
They
authority.
have the.
I just thought
authority.
MGL said you appoint one person to be the animal control officer.
At minimum, we need at least one person.
Okay.
appointed. And that person that takes on that responsibility is the full-time ACO. The other two work as basically fill-in coverage.
So what are we appointing here, all four people?
We're appointing all
Mhm.
four.
Okay.
All four to have the power of, kind of like with the police department, how you're appointing
Alright, so.
all members to have that power.
What's the Barry Common Oversight Committee do nowadays? Are they still active? Is that-
Yeah, because the
it's just-
Common Project has a couple,
Punch list.
punch list stuff, so they're still a committee.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
So
Can you
do
get us an
you-
update on the punch list and what they're thinking about doing with any remaining funds?
Yeah. Remaining funds, one thing I was gonna bring up to the board under my report was that I did submit a request for proposals for the repairs to the bandstand, just to see what kind of number comes back.
So you have a scope?
I have a written scope, I don't know what's gonna come back on it. I think that going through it, there'll be a lot more questions on it, we'll probably end up canceling it, but it might at least give us an idea of what we're talking for cost.
Okay.
And if that's gonna trigger any ADA compliance. My own thought on it is that to properly do it, we might have to do engineered design, in order to get an actual clear scope on it. I think the way it's currently out there might be a little ambiguous, but we might at least get somebody to come back and say we have an approximate cost.
Could you email me the scope?
Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah, it's basically, fixing of the replacement of the stairs, fixing of the spalling of the concrete inside the basement, repair of the bulkhead, repainting of, stripping and repainting of all the wood columns, repair of the lighting system and repair of the audio system. It's basically what's written. So
Okay. Gotcha.
they might come back and say it's just too broad. I'm already anticipating any contractor is going to look at it's probably going to say it's too broad, but at least might be able to come on site and say, all right, well, this will cost you this will cost you this.
Gotcha. Okay.
So this list, this is not right. We
You
put
wanna just
2009, well, we put 2019, and what it did is it grabbed people that are expiring next year. So that, it
All
caught
right.
some of them, but it didn't, so we're gonna have to table this. to get the correct list.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying? We thought it grabbed that list that we were working off of. It didn't. Because there's a lot
We were
of.
looking at everything as a one-year appointment.
Right. Yes, that's exactly what happened. So if you want to table that, we can do that at the next meeting.
Okay.
Sorry.
Let's table it then.
So what if we make a motion to extend any expiring ones till our next meeting when we can reappoint?
I want to
To
update that
officially
to
cover the
no
fact that
dated
they're in
completely.
May for a
Yeah.
few weeks.
I mean, you can, but
Yeah.
then you'd have to enter it in the computer for just a short period of time if that's what you want to do.
Update that with
Um,
Paul and Chris and whoever
Yeah,
else
that's
is on
why
it.
we're looking at, like,
Yeah, it's not right.
Yeah, this is-
It grabbed a bunch of inactive
Yeah, I don't know
people
if we have
too.
to enter, if we want to extend the,
Okay.
We
What
never
system
had
is
to,
this in?
so
Is this
Yeah.
a separate software thing or is it
it's a
just a spreadsheet?
database.
Okay.
we'll just table it.
Like an
So
access
it's a da-
thing?
Yes,
Okay.
Just table
any,
it.
and I've never liked
Means if
it.
you didn't build it, you don't know how it works. At least that's how
We got
I feel
minutes,
about
right?
We
it.
pay
We're allowed to
someone to
have
manage this and it's not
the,
managed well.
Yeah.
Okay.
committee appointments.
We got some minutes.
Until the next.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you, Charlie. Okay.
Motion to approve the minutes from June 4th.
Second.
Any comments? Call for vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Are they here for me to sign or no?
Yep, in my file, hold
All right,
on.
annual appointments table.
Pen back up.
Here, see.
Selectmen's reports, town administrator reports. We'll start with anything you have to report on, Greg.
No.
Charlie?
Nope.
I'll bring up just a little experience this weekend with the business community of Barry and the event they had on the Common. Appreciated the help with Charlie. We sat at a table for a little bit trying to encourage people to fill in some of the open vacancies on some of the committees. Had a couple people seem interested. I hope it goes beyond just a little talk at the table, but it was a good start.
Sounded rowdy up there a few times. I can hear
It was
pretty well.
fun though.
Yeah,
It was,
no,
you know, it
sounded
wasn't,
good.
yeah, it actually was pretty busy. I thought for the event, I actually felt it went well. I mean, it went from noon to 6, and it actually was pretty busy noon to 5 the whole time. And then the last hour, you got the normal, most everybody's packed up. You got about 3 tables left, but I thought it was good, and I thought it was a real good building block to maybe do it
Really
another
wanted
year.
to get up, but I was literally tied up all day. I thought someone would take me a couple hours, and there was people over there with me, and it was the whole day until 6 o'clock at night. So
No,
it was
I
frustrating. I couldn't
understand.
get up to it. I could hear it all going on. Like, I want to go see how good this is. It sounded great.
It was good. They did a good job. They kind of kids stuff at one end, the adult kind of sectioned off of the 21 and over drinking area was at the other end, and in the middle were all the vendors and the farmers market and all the other. I thought it was good. They thought they might either it'll grow or they'll might bring a couple things. There was some talks about could we improve, but I really liked it. I thought it went well.
Good.
The day was beautiful, so you couldn't
Yeah,
complain
it
about the
was a great
weather.
day.
So I just wanted to make a point of, it was another good activity. It was another good activity that either was sponsored by or assisted or coordinated by our business community of Barry. They manned the whole thing through them and the vendors. They funded the whole thing. So it was just a nice thing. So I just wanted to make a point that the business community of Barry is continuing to play a role in the community that looks at the whole community, not just themselves. So, and then later in the evening, I had the privilege, the first time I ever went to the Band of Voices at Town Hall. I liked it. It was nice. It was something for, you know, outside of a little piano in a couple moments, it was almost all, you know, just a cappella type, choir type sound, but they sing very well for, you know, I liked it. And then they had the new piano that was donated. And so they played on that, and they had the people there that had donated it. So for those that aren't aware that might be watching the meeting, I just wanted to let them know that that's a nice opportunity. They just accept little donations if you can give it, so it's good family experience. So that was my little selectmen's report, was just, you got a lot of nice things the town does, and you can participate and find a lot of good, happy things to do without having to go spend a lot of money. Do you have anything on the town administrator's report?
The only thing I wanted to add was that Faye has tendered her resignation effective July 13th, so.
Move up that meeting to July 12th.
Okay.
Not gonna let you get away that quick.
So actually,
Not
so
that
I'm trying
easy.
to push it out.
Perhaps we should also, in that note, discuss, well, it's kind of short, discuss advertising, obviously, but we could talk about that and figure out what exactly we're gonna do.
Yeah, I mean, I still.
How many hours you really need, if you want to go back to as many hours, or someone with less hours, or a different scope. And that's gonna be more, I think, up to you for what.
I haven't really had a chance to really put down on paper. I haven't really had a lot of time to process how we're gonna go forward with it, but I always want to let you guys know. But since, you know, our next meeting isn't gonna be for a little bit, I'm gonna move forward with trying to basically solicit the position. So,
Okay.
I'd like to try to have somebody at least in line and ready to go before, you know, Faye leaves.
I would support you advertising before she leaves. And if you're lucky, you might even get someone in that you decide that she might get a day with. Say, this is what I did.
Yeah.
I do want to take the time, though, to say that I do appreciate what you do.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest. We've had our moments. We both are kind of stubborn about what we believe in and stand for, and I'm okay with that. But we've bumped heads, but we've also been able to come back and just be professional again, and I really appreciate you being able to do that with me.
Yeah.
And I appreciate what you did, especially last year leading up to the budget, and the support and the ability to fill in all the gaps that we needed to get that done. So you deserve it, so I wanted to say it.
Thank you. I did tell Andrew that although July 13th will be like my last in-office day, I don't plan on just, you know, leaving Barry high and dry. If there's some overlap time that needs to happen, I plan to make sure that that happens.
Okay.
My new employer, I made that clear on the table that that's something
There
that
could
may,
be
you
some
know,
transition.
Yeah,
Okay.
and everybody's fine with that, so.
Well, thank you very much for offering that.
And good luck with the new job.
Thank you.
The only reports I would have done, we covered. I was talking with the chief about Stetson and other people about Stetson, and those things have already been discussed, and obviously had communicated with Bobby about his hours. I didn't want to see him take his vacation hours. Unstaffed. And that's why I left the meeting at DPW to talk to Andrew about that, because I couldn't discuss it at the meeting with you guys, but that's why we had that discussion at DPW meeting. So I was doing those things, but nothing else that's already been covered, so.
Okay. And I guess I did forget
It's not
that.
that I'm inactive, I'm saying, I just.
Oh, right,
it's
yeah.
It's just nothing different than we've done.
I just want to put it out there. I did go to that last QEMP meeting at Ruggles Lane, and I ended up sitting at a table with town administrator and selectmen from Hardwick, as well as a selectman from New Braintree. And it ended up being the table where they were discussing potential shared municipal services, things like that. Couple things came up, and it all depends on timing of everybody's. They did all mention that they might be interested in sharing of a transfer station, because Hardwick doesn't have a transfer station, they just have a recycle center.
Right.
Because they're on the aquifer, they can't take solid waste in that location for any temporary storage and moving it along. New Braintree is obviously interested. They sound like they would be interested. Nobody was there from OCAM, but I do believe we all know that their logistics might make it, so some of their people might be interested.
Which would mean we have to look into modifying our rules that is only Barry trash, which can be modified, but we'd have to look into modifying that regulation, but.
So I bring it up, so the transfer station committee that we're building might reach out to those towns and see what true interest they have in the timeline that might fit with those towns as well as with us. Because that may modify the kind of the accounts receivable, the accounts payable that we're actually reviewing.
What I found when I looked at it, as I told you guys at that meeting before, is that, you know, the potential when you start to increase the numbers down there does increase the revenues exponentially compared to the cost. So it would be
And Hardwick
wise to increase
does
the
their
price.
own recycling. So they're also familiar with their recycling market and what they've been paying and getting in. It sounded like the town administrator said that the recycling alone they generally seem to be breaking even with what they do.
And maybe
So that might just be a business model that'll help us build off of, like, what have you been doing, who do you sell to, what are you getting, how much do you man to do it, and then you can start getting ratios and concepts of.
As I said, for us, the most of the money I see for us is the revenues in the trash stream. So perhaps we have a reciprocal action with them where they might want to take the recycling on. And we don't have to set up the recycling, the bundlers, and the only expense we talked about is that equipment. Maybe they wanted.
So, right,
Be the ones
so
to
that
take
would be
that
something
portion.
worth talking to find
And
out.
it gives them something too. They can take a portion that makes some money off it, and we can stick with the trash side and make money off it, which is the more profitable end of this right now. We can still handle scrap metal easy enough, but the recycling, the plastics, maybe they'd be willing to take that on, and we come to an agreement for it. Part of the scope. to
Well,
look at.
right. So I was bringing it up because it was just more of a, it's just a little bit of a lightning bug that chase it if you want, but I think it's at least worth exploring.
It's a good dialogue you had with them about that. It was
Yeah.
a good idea to talk about that.
And then the other one that came up potentially was also if, and you're aware, Hardwick is using Ware for their ambulance,
They're paying a lot of money.
but they would be interested, depending on our situation and our ability to man or not man, we might take maybe like the northern half of Hardwick.
Back to my more EMT suggestion with stipends.
And so when you start putting that together, and of course hearing the ability to possibly continually man a second ambulance, if the costs pan out, you'd have to do some math. And then logistics, location, and there's a lot more to it, but it does sound like there's a potential there that
They're paying
if we're covering
significant money.
Hardwick and we're also covering New Braintree as much as we are, then there's more to look at than just personnel, it's also location.
They contribute a lot more than New Braintree does, let me tell you. They're something like $60,000 they pay for their ambulance service.
That was one thing I wanted to bring up. Actually, thank you for reminding me, because I know Bob had actually reached out and had some conversation with New Braintree on this, and I forgot that we were gonna have that as
Charlie.
a agenda item.
Oh, right.
Charlie, could you read your minutes for me, please?
But
Thank you.
the New Braintree Board of Selectmen was interested in meeting with you guys to discuss amendment to the contract for the next 3 years. Jason, Bob had said that in his preliminary conversation that they'd be amenable to increasing up to basically an increase of $5,000 next year and potentially another $5,000 for the next 2 years. But that's a conversation that the two boards would have to
I
have.
got you, okay.
So, but the second, years 2 and 3 of that contract, if they were amenable to that, would be that same $20 per resident assessment that Hardwick is being assessed by Ware in their current contract, so it would almost mirror.
Okay, gotcha.
And that becomes better for the fire department. There's still the idea is to recover your costs and make a small profit, hopefully, by the end of all your runs. You're trying to set a model up that you're making some money off the ambulance, but you sure don't make much as it charges because of the expenses. Getting that capital in up front is what makes it work.
I don't know if you guys want to wait until the next fiscal year to start those conversations, or if you want to throw in a couple, see if I can't catch a couple of dates in July that might work for them.
July 16th. Try that one, see if it fits.
Okay.
But let them know we may have to shift that date.
Okay.
But just because we had already talked about maybe
Mhm.
shifting that date, but
Yeah, that would be good.
because it wouldn't hurt to get the conversation started.
Right.
Um,
And these, I hope you guys understand, we're making some real headway towards finding revenues for the town, and this is, I think, an important objective of ours, and we're finding, small as they are here and there, it's positive steps. And hopefully we get this business plan development coming in, that will help a little bit more. But every little piece we get back is something more we can get for the town, and some way to improve it. I'm satisfied to see the steps we're making.
I think we're going in that direction. One last thing that just came to mind. Bob's contract is up in 2 weeks, correct? Yeah.
Another year,
No,
isn't it?
19.
He's a 3-year contract, right?
Yeah, this is year
He was
2.
hired before I won my election.
Let me look, hold on, I
Which-
just had it up.
It's only been a
So
year.
it was sometime in July.
This
Because
is-
I got
Would be
elected in
This is-
August
this
and
is
he
year
was
2.
already hired when that started.
This is year 2.
Yeah, he has one more year.
Does
You would
he
have
have
to
another full
open-
year?
You would have to open it up in December.
Okay, it came
It
to
would
mind,
come
so you're
this
right,
year.
okay. Right, because I didn't come in on the first year of
Right.
the selectmen's
If we intend.
term that I took over.
if
I
we
came
intend
in
to
halfway
modify-
through,
I
like a
think
year and a
the
half in.
Police chief too, right?
If we intend to modify the contract, we have to open negotiations 6 months, I think, prior to the contract ending.
Not even if you intend on modifying, you have to open it up to
6 months
renew.
prior, you have to tell them if you're not gonna renew, I think is the word. And then
Yes.
after that,
Or
you can
change.
just schedule
Correct.
negotiating.
It's a 6 months, no matter what you're doing,
And then I think
basically.
correctly after that, we got a year to do the police chief.
Police, I think is.
Fire chief is through 17 through 19, police chief is 17 through 19,
So
it's the
same
same
time.
thing. Mhm.
Different time of year though.
No.
Because I didn't hire the fire
No.
chief.
No,
If it-
they
it
had
doesn't
to
matter.
end-
The fiscal year goes in July.
No, they had to
Yeah.
end on the same time.
Oh, we did? Oh, right, we
He
did the
really
police
did like a
chief
2.5
like 6 months
year.
short or something, like we made it, you're right.
He had a 2.5 year contract,
Okay.
not 3.
And what did we agree with on deputy chief? Who's,
We haven't agreed to anything.
We haven't.
no, I mean, did we agree that you might help? Is that what it was?
Yeah, we're
The
meeting-
negotiating and then,
We have a
okay,
negotiation session.
Thank you, I was
scheduled
just-
Yeah, we're meeting
for
Wednesday morning.
Wednesday.
thank you. I thought we talked about
You
it, but then I was
wanna
like,
hand
I'm
that
not
down?
supposed to do something, right?
Andrew, that's that article I was telling you about with OCAM in there.
Well, we're talking to selectmen reports. Did anybody go to their CPC's night at Stone Cow? Any
Yes, I
any
did.
discussion
I
to
was
share
there.
about that? I'm just curious because obviously I wasn't going.
Honestly, it seemed like they were saying the same thing. They were just trying to give people a chance to hear it again, it sounded like. I
Just help
didn't
them-
hear
just
anything
help them
different.
understand it. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they didn't really get into a lot. They kind of just explained their position. That's how yeah, I didn't,
Yeah, that was about it.
seemed like the
They didn't
same
talk,
message.
they didn't
but-
speak very long, actually.
Okay.
And it didn't become quite the, and I'm not saying it was gonna be, it's just I didn't know going. They didn't get into like every potential marijuana. It was more focused on their citizens petition bylaw. And then how it may or may not relate to the other bylaws, but they didn't get into the other bylaws in any detail.
Okay.
So, that's something before the meeting tomorrow.
What was
We
it?
should probably have a little huddle to better understand how things are gonna get presented, who's gonna present them, and how we're gonna make sure it's clear at the point it's being presented that this vote means this.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So typically in the past, what I had done is prepared the motions and just started with the chair, went to vice chair,
Right.
to this person, and Article 1 was that person, 2, 3,
Right.
and it just went in order. Is it, you're looking to do something different? Because I
No.
need to know that ahead of time, because I have that all prepared for town meeting. So when I get there, I know where these motions are going.
I'm not so much each motion being presented by who, but between us or the planning board, when we get like the 3 prohibition articles in a row, those are the ones everybody says, I don't know what this means. I'm voting yes to say no, or I'm voting no to say yes. They always get themselves spun around.
But those are planning board articles. So if the select board They're not select board articles.
But we need to coordinate with them to make sure we understand who's speaking and what the intent is, because we
They
do
would
have a
speak-
say.
They would
The
speak for
planning
it.
board ought
But-
to do it.
What I'm suggesting is we have a voice in trying to ensure that someone makes the effort to clearly explain what it means. So rather than just assuming they're going to do it, we should have a little talk
I
to
agree.
say, how are we gonna do it?
We'll agree
And that's all
on
I'm
the lang-
suggesting, not
we can-
necessarily,
We can agree along in the language, or one of us could answer the question, it means this, and this is what we see it means. We could agree on how we want to phrase it to the people.
I just
And
think there's
who's
some
gonna- who's gonna-
bylaws it's
and who's-
worth having
Because
a little discussion or a little preamble that might not,
I am sure somebody will ask, what do the selectmen think? And that's what we need a statement for it prepared.
Most people, ones that I've talked to, have said, how am I supposed to answer this question if I don't want it?
right.
Or how am I supposed to answer it? If I answer yes, what does that really mean?
And you don't want
Yes means
it.
you prohibit.
And
Yes
Right.
means you don't want
that's
it.
what has to, somebody has to tell them
Simple layman
that's
terms,
what they're
yeah.
voting for. Because then afterwards, if they voted how they didn't really want to, they'll say, I didn't understand that.
But the
planning
key
board-
is you gotta be able to do it with very few words.
Yeah,
Because if you start getting into a story, all of a sudden, you're the reason they got it wrong.
But the planning board
Because,
could
you know
read
what I
the
mean? Because you go
article.
into a circle.
The planning board could read the article and say, just so everybody's clear, a yes vote means X, a no vote means X.
Yeah.
But this is a planning
Right.
board article, it's not a selectman article. So it's not like, it's
No.
your job to sell this article, it's their article.
No, but we can.
Do you get what I'm saying?
We can still
Right,
talk-
it's just
we can
my
still
job though
comment
to
on
make
it,
sure
that's all.
that it's presented in a way that the town is gonna understand it.
yeah.
Typically, the finance
I mean,
committee will
the
say
town
favorable
meeting
or
is
unfavorable, but
really
typically we will give.
Hours, we
Explanation.
just allow people, we don't have to allow the planning board to offer any of these articles.
Yeah, they're setting one.
If I'm correct,
Like,
I
you
mean,
can't see it in
you
the back,
do
so
it
doesn't
because it's
matter.
respectful, but
Mhm.
we could be the ones to present every article, except a citizen's petition, and even then we could do it. We don't have to give them the floor to make the motion.
True.
We choose to,
We
out of
have,
respect.
we have to
It's-
put, we have to
but
put it on
it's-
the warrant with the signatures, we don't have to let them read it.
That's all I mean, based
Who?
on kind of,
Citizens petitions? Yes, you do. It's their motion, it's their article. We do not participate in citizens petitions. They are required to have a representative to present the article and to discuss the article.
Yeah, but I don't think we have to have them read it.
I'm just saying that.
But
And
we
I
have to
would
put
never
it on
suggest
and-
not doing it. I
Either
just
way,
meant-
they're gonna read it anyways, we're not,
Sometimes we'll get tradition and respect confused with required.
Okay.
so we're good? Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Adjourned. I always wanted to do that.